Good morning, and welcome to the Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone in the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of the hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll number 11982 at 290 Grizzly Crescent. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Joanna McCallum. I am the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are Andrea Williams and Christoph Breyer. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? Okay, perfect. Good. I am now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant's the complainant. There's no complainant representative today. Would you please state for the record your name and your role in the hearing? So if you want to just step up to the microphone here and be friends with the mic. And it's very malleable, so whatever to your height, because you're much taller than me.
I'm James Lewis Smith.
Wonderful. And you're the homeowner?
I am.
Perfect. Thank you. Now to the respondent, would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your position with the municipality?
My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. Deanne would love to have been here in public, but because of G7, all of the hotel rooms were billions of dollars. So she's zooming in today. Thank you. So the LARB standard practice is to have the complainant present all of the evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent, and then questions from the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from the complainant, and then questions from the panel, and then the complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. So if anyone needs a break or you don't understand something that's happening in the process, please stop and ask. We want everyone to make sure they feel like they've had a fair hearing and that they understand the process. And I will also take this time to remind everyone to please turn off their mobile devices. So are there any questions with regards to the procedure as I've laid it out?
No.
Wonderful. I see that both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing, and to save time, we're going to mark through the evidence so that we're all speaking from the same pages. So to start with, we have the review board complaint, which we're going to mark as C1. And then we have the complainant's package, which we're going to mark as C2. And then we have the, what is it called? The respondent disclosure, which is R1. So much paper. And then the complainants, there's the disclosure, there's sorry. Yeah, where's?
I think they're together, but
Are they rebuttal together? Yeah, I was wondering.
so
There's a C.
Right,
yeah,
thank
C1
you.
is 2 pages, and then C3 is 2 pages as well.
Right, and so then the complainant's rebuttal is C3. And then the respondent's surrebuttal is, we're going to mark as R2. Killing some trees. Perfect. Okay, so now I've lost my script, of course. So are there any preliminary issues for the panel to address? None? Mr. Smith, we are ready to hear your evidence if you're set to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. With respect to everybody's time here, are you familiar with what my complaints were? Do you want me to start right from the beginning or just get to where I am right now and the reason I'm here?
We've all read the package that was
Okay.
provided, but it's up to you how you want to
Okay.
argue your case.
Okay, I'll be very brief. The way this all came about is it came to my knowledge that my property, which is 290 Grizzly, for whatever reason, was the highest assessed value of the 12 comparables that are adjacent to me, and which is why I started the whole process. Initially, I've been talking via email with Grayson, Grayson Bannerman, I believe, from Legacy. Does that sound correct? And he's been really good at responding to all of my inquiries. But through all of the inquiries that started it, I couldn't. The first thing that came to mind was that there was an error in the living space for my property. So in order to get that corrected, I had to file the complaint to start things. To Mr. Bannerman's credit, he did come out and view the property on the 3rd and did reassess it and reduce the amount of living space, so I thank him for that. But what was left there is that even with, with the reduced living space, which also translated to a reduced tax assessment, I still was the highest one of the 12 properties, mine being one of them. So I asked Grayson Bannerman the reason for that. And the comparable, which is the house right next door, his response was that that house was of a lower construction quality. So I asked him to give me facts as to why that was, and I've yet to have that satisfied. Because the houses were built in the same year. I'm talking about the house comparable, that'd be 292. Built in the same year, same standard of construction. It's a wooden framed house, vinyl siding. If you look at them from the curb, they're identical. It's just that 292 is considerably larger and a slightly larger lot, and yet initially, my tax assessment was almost 100,000 more. So all I'm really asking for at this stage, I've had my living space reduced, which did help a small amount, but I'm still the highest assessed value of the 12 properties. And I haven't been able to get an answer as to what would make my comparable a lower standard of construction than mine. When you look at them from the curb, they're identical. And that is the basis of why I'm here.
I'm drowning in paper, sorry. Just atrocious. Thank you. Do you have anything else to add with regards to the evidence that you're putting forward?
The only thing that I would add, and this is rather confusing to me, when I had Grayson Bannerman come out, he came out with Deanna Bannerman as well, and they viewed the property June 3rd, and then they reassessed it June 5th, gave me a reduced value. It was based on the fact that they had an incorrect size for the garage, which in effect made it look like my living space was larger than it was. So once it was corrected, my garage is larger and my living space is smaller, which translated to a lower tax evaluation. But when Grayson gave me some comparables after that, when I wasn't satisfied, all of the examples he gave me, the reason for my house being assessed higher was because my garage was larger. So that's like kind of the opposite of what I started with. Like, you can't have both. That's why I'm here.
Okay.
I probably would have withdrawn my case had it not been for that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the respondent?
Yeah, I just have one question. So in the verbal presentation provided by the complainant, he's referencing 12 comparables. So in your disclosure, your original disclosure and in your rebuttal, did you reference any of these 12 comparables? Or how many of the comparables did you reference?
That's a question for you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't hear that.
Oh, could you repeat the question, please, Ms. Bannerman?
Sure. So in the verbal presentation provided by the complainant, he's referencing 12 comparables that are used in comparison to his property. How many properties had he actually referenced in his disclosure and again in his rebuttal?
I believe the comparables, well, I used 11 other properties that were right in my adjacent area. The only two that I picked out of that were at a lower value that I felt were comparable were only two. And one of those being 292, which is directly next door to me. And the reason we went with that one is because it's the only other property that's considered the same. It's an entry-level house. So the lower level and the upper level are all considered living space. So those are direct comparisons because of the same style of house. So those are the two that I've used.
Sure, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the panelists with regards to this?
Just one question, I think. I think you were talking about the property next door to you, and I just wanted to make sure, your property, you haven't done any significant renovations to it since you purchased it that might account for the increase?
The property is 35 years old, so yes, there's definitely been some renovations done since I've lived there.
Right. Thank you.
Great. So now we will have the respondent provide their evidence.
Thank you. So today we will demonstrate that assessments are prepared annually, that the legislated valuation standard is market value as of July 1st, 2024, and that this assessment was prepared using mass appraisal in a fair and equitable manner. So if we can go to pages 4 through 6. The subject property is located at 290 Grizzly Crescent in Canmore. It is a detached single-family residence built in 1989 and located in an R1 zoning district. The original 2024 property assessment was $1,205,000. However, following a site inspection conducted on June 3rd, 2025, corrections were made to the garage area, which had previously been included as living space. It had previously been entered as a shop area rather than a full garage, which it's now used as. The revised assessment that we are recommending to the Assessment Review Board is $1,174,000. So now on page 7, property assessments in the town of Canmore are completed under the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. The legislation requires that assessments reflect the market value of the property, which is defined as the most probable price a property would sell for in the open market as of the valuation date, which is July 1st, 2024, and its physical condition as of December 31st, 2024. This must be done using mass appraisal, which involves stratifying properties, identifying common characteristics, and applying uniform models to ensure equity. The approach used to value residential detached homes in the town of Canmore is the market modified cost approach, which combines the cost approach with market data to adjust the values and reflect typical buyer and seller behavior in Canmore in order to achieve the market value. It is especially suitable here given the volume and reliability of the sales data available. Sales used to support the assessment were drawn from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024, and then they were adjusted to reflect the market conditions as of July 1st, 2024. This is consistent with provincial audit guidelines, which recommends time-adjusted sales to increase the reliability of valuation models. So now on page 11, the subject property is a semi-custom 2,142 square foot, 2-story basementless home built in 1989 and is located in the Cougar Creek West neighborhood. To validate the assessment, we analyzed several comparables of two-story, no-basement homes with similar quality and finishing, located in the same neighborhood as the subject property. They are similar to the subject in terms of age, size, and location. The comparables provided by the respondent both have smaller lot sizes than the subject property, and the property at 175 Cougar Point Road is approximately 200 square feet larger. The property at 166 Cougar Point Road backs onto a high-traffic road, Benchlands Trail. So on page 14, in response to the complainant's comparables, we've reviewed two specific properties that were included in the complainant's submission. That's the property at 292 Grizzly Crescent, which we have in our system as a lower quality of construction and finishes, and 202 Grizzly Crescent. After the recommended revised value, which we presented to the board, the subject property's assessment is now in line with this comparable as well. So the property at 292 Grizzly Crescent, as mentioned, it is a lower quality of construction and finishes to the subject property. This property was flagged and brought forward by the complainant, stating that it is very, very similar to their own property. We flagged this to be inspected for next year's assessment because of this information. So just because it is a lower assessment because of the lower quality of construction and finishes doesn't mean that the subject property's assessment is incorrect. So it's important also to note that neither the complainant's comparables have had any recent or valid sales data, which also limits their reliability. They're looking strictly at the differences in the assessed values. And these differences in the assessed values are directly attributable to the differences in the property characteristics themselves. So in closing, we respectfully submit that the 2024 recommended assessment of $1,174,000 is in line with provincial legislation. It's based on sound appraisal methodology, and it's supported by verified time-adjusted comparables and is equitable in relation to similar properties in Canmore. So we respectfully ask the board to revise the 2024 assessment to $1,174,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. So does the complainant have any questions with regards to the evidence that Ms. Bannerman has provided?
I totally respect her ability to do these assessments. I'm not questioning her professionalism at all. But what I'm still questioning here, and that was the big question that was also brought up here, is this lower quality of construction comment. And I've yet to get an example or a fact to support that. Like, how do you determine a lower quality of construction? I've asked this question many times, and I simply just wanted.
And now's your opportunity to ask her in the public forum.
I will ask it right now again. I've asked this with Grayson several times. What factual data do you have to support the comment that in this case 292, which was built pretty much in the same year as mine, is of a lower quality of construction?
Okay, so as I mentioned during my presentation, we will be looking at the property 292 Grizzly Crescent to ensure that it's been properly classified according to the guidelines that we have for quality classifications. So the subject property is classified as a semi-custom property. So what that means is that it has architectural differences than a standard. So standard property would be just a box with standard, linoleum, arborite countertops, standard finishes within. So the subject property's classification as a semi-custom means that it is slightly above that standard cookie cutter type of home. So when the complainant has raised the issue with with the property at 292, we did address that with him, indicating that we will be looking at this property to ensure that the quality classification is correct for next year's assessment. That being said, it doesn't mean that just because 292 may or may not be classified incorrectly, that the subject property is classified incorrectly. So we did do an interior inspection, as mentioned, on June 3rd and confirmed the property characteristics, the quality of construction. We confirmed the sizes of the property and the various finishes within the interior, and do feel that it does fall into the semi-custom quality classification.
Okay. Yeah, do you have any follow-up questions? to-
Yeah, to follow up on that, you're talking of interior finishes, so you have examples of interior finishes for 292 then, I would assume?
That is what we don't have, which is why, as mentioned to you and to the board previously, is why we're going to follow up with an inspection request for that property.
May I?
Oh, yeah, for
may
sure.
I
You're
address-
welcome to continue to ask questions. I
I-
apologize.
I don't want to be put in a difficult position where, what you have to realize, I've lived in this house 35 years, and so has my neighbor in 292. So it's not my goal to have the solution to this problem be that my neighbor's taxes are raised. You can appreciate the difficult position that would put me in if that's the outcome of this hearing. And that troubles me a little bit. If I can just back up slightly, you also brought up the property 202 Grizzly, which I haven't addressed. When you initially sent me your information, you actually sent pictures of the wrong house, so I wasn't sure if it was the right one. But now that I know that 202 is the one you're talking about, what you have to understand with 202, which is probably the most comparable house to mine, it's almost the same design from the outside, you'd swear it was the same floor plan. However, 202, which is almost the same tax assessment as what I currently have with the reduced amount, 202 is from the curb appeal. I have to go with outside because I can't see the inside of all these houses, neither can you. But 202 is a far higher grade of construction. The whole front end is Rundle stone and stucco. It's got a huge addition in the kitchen that I know that was done recently. I don't see how you could say they're the same. Like, that's a much higher grade than the house I'm in. I wish I could say it wasn't true, but it's true, so.
So was there a question for that, for her? I don't think that there was a question, which is.
Well,
what she's answering.
okay, in closing, really, my question still is, if I supposedly live in a house that's a higher grade of construction, you still haven't really answered my question. What exactly are we talking about? Did I use a higher grade of siding, or is my landscaping higher? There has to be something to make that comment, because looking from the outside, and that's all we can do unless you're going to do an interior inspection of every home, I don't see the difference. It's the same kind of vinyl siding, same comparable landscaping, same type of shingles, house is made with the same, same 2x4s. You haven't actually, and respectfully, I just haven't been told what makes the difference in quality in your view. If you could give me something like that, I could probably be satisfied, but I haven't heard it yet.
Hey, and I believe I did answer that in my response earlier to the last question that was posed. As mentioned, the quality of construction is dependent on various different factors. So it's dependent on the quality of finishings, within the interior, the exterior. When we're looking at the property at 202 Grizzly, which was mentioned, this property is a semi-custom property as well, which is similar to the subject property. The property at, as mentioned, 292 Grizzly is a property that we're going to flag for a reinspect to try and get into to verify what the last assessor had classified it as, to ensure that it's classified correctly. And although this meeting is public, obviously when we go and we flag things for re-inspections, it's not, we don't throw neighbors under the bus. We do hear oftentimes from property owners during the inquiry period and through complaints, base for our assessments.
Do you have any more questions, sir?
Again, I still don't know if that, it seems to dance around my question. I come up from a tradesman background. That's what I did my whole life. So if you could say to me that, there was a different material used that would make a house worth more, and I mean, from a curb appeal, I guess you could say if I had brickwork or stonework or something outstanding that I could see the difference, that's the kind of answer I'm looking for. And it's not that I respect where you come from and I understand your background, so it's not that I'm questioning your ability to do these assessments, but again, the question was, what's the difference in quality from a tradesperson's point of view? And I have yet to hear that answer. I mean, to me, a vinyl sided house with asphalt shingles, concrete driveway, regular lawn with a tree or two, I don't see the difference. Like I said, if one house, as in the case, say, of 202, had extensive Rundle stone, which it does, non-vinyl siding, stucco, those are all things that I can see make it worth more. But in the case of 292 in my house, 290, I don't see that. And I still have yet to hear from a tradesperson's point of view what the difference in that construction quality is. So it's the only question I have.
That's fine. We still have more opportunity for others to ask questions, so the hearing's not over yet.
Okay.
So do I have any of my colleagues on the panel? Do they have any questions for the respondent? Go ahead, Mr. Breyer.
I have questions for Ms.
Oh.
Benneman. So we heard you inspected property 290 Grizzly Crescent in June the 3rd?
That's correct.
That's correct. And is it correct that you are assuming a lower quality of 292 Grizzly Crescent because you haven't inspected it in the past?
Yeah, so the property at 292 Grizzly, the assessor will, or we will, state that it is very similar in looks from the exterior of the property. As mentioned, this was historical data, so when the property was brought on at the time, it was classified as a standard home rather than a semi-custom home. Looking at the property, I agree with the complainant that it is something that we should be looking at for, as part of our re-inspection cycle to ensure that the quality is actually a standard finish. So that would be something similar to arborite countertops, linoleum in the floor, carpetings, a very standard, builder spec kind of home finish.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
I have a couple of questions just on the comparable analysis. So on page 12, the comparable sales that you have, neither one of them are particularly close to the subject property, and they're obviously a lot smaller in the lot size. So I just wonder if you could comment on that. I mean, there's only 2 sales, so it's pretty limited, and neither of them seem particularly similar.
Sure. So the reason that we had selected those two sales is that they're in the same location, like neighborhood, the Cougar Creek West neighborhood as the subject property. So they're treated in the same type of market environment. They're also of the same construction quality of the subject property, so the semi-custom finishes, but they're also a two-story, no-basement home, which is similar to or the same as the subject property. So the reason that those were selected rather than properties directly on the street was because of, as mentioned, they're similar quality construction, similar structure type, close within, within the same market environment, and they were actual sales.
Okay, and any reason in particular there's only 2 sales? It doesn't seem like a very large sample, I guess.
Sure. So they were the best sales in order to verify or to support the property's assessment. Unfortunately, we can't make more sales occur or find, create sales of better comparables.
Okay, and then my other question relates to page 14 of your package. The complainant referenced the 11 properties around his property and their assessed values, and you've chosen 2 here to look at. Obviously, we've got an issue on the quality and whether one is higher or lower than the other. But again, any reason only to choose 2 rather than the wider sample?
Yeah, because in the complainant's information, they've only referenced those 2 particular properties.
I think if I look at, I guess in the rebuttal package, we're saying there's reference to 284 to 294 Grizzly, and then 289 to 297 and 1014 Cougar Creek Drive. So that's what I was referring to.
Yeah, so the, in our response, we're responding to the original disclosure information.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So, where am I? We had a very long day yesterday, so my brain's a little, sorry. That's what I thought. Okay, so if you have any rebuttal evidence, this is the time to share it. Sorry, my apologies. To the complainant, my apologies.
No problem. Basically, to close, I guess all I can say is the reality of this.
Can I just stop you? Because this is
Yeah.
your chance to present your rebuttal evidence. There will be an opportunity to sum up afterwards.
Oh.
So this is your package C3.
Yes.
Right,
So
that's
if
what I
you
was
wanted
looking
to-
for, because I was like,
Yeah. So if you
Yeah,
want to go over that.
this is what I would
that will be the
highlight
time.
here.
There'll be an opportunity to discuss
Sorry?
that.
So your rebuttal evidence, which we had marked at the beginning as C3, this is the perfect opportunity to go over this evidence.
Oh, okay. Actually, I think that's probably what I would have ended up doing.
Good, we just want to make sure.
Yeah, yeah. So as I put in my rebuttal evidence, I guess the big question here is that with my revised tax assessment that I guess I won't see until next year, it's been reduced to, I think it was reduced by pretty close to 30,000, but not quite. The reality of this situation here, and the reason that I'm here today, is that in comparison again to the adjacent property, 292, which is a house that's over 300 square feet larger, and a lot that's slightly larger, I think it's maybe 40 square feet larger, but still larger. So we have a larger house, a larger lot, and in my opinion, near identical construction quality. And yet I am still going to be assessed going forward. I'm currently assessed at 100,000, well, 99,000 higher, and going forward, I'll still be 66,000 higher. And that's where I see the unfairness in the assessment. And those are just facts. This is not, these are not just feelings, these are facts. And that's all I can deal with is facts, because that's all I expect you to hear. So, yeah, that's what I would say. So I'm assessed at 66,000 higher next year. I'm assessed at 99,000 higher this year. And yet the house that I'm comparing it to is over 300 square feet larger, and I believe it was 42 square feet larger lot. And in my opinion, from the street view, it's the exact same construction. I know that it was brought up with interior finishes, but I don't know if this is relevant here because we don't have interior finishes for other properties to compare to. So I know when Deanna was out to the house in June 3rd, she had the opportunity to view the inside. But if that had something to do with it, I don't know that that's fair here because we don't have comparables for the interiors of these other properties. All I have to go on is what I can see from the street. So that's basically what I have to tell you. And thank you.
You're welcome. Are there any questions from the respondent to the complainant?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Thanks. Are there any questions from my colleagues on the panel? Krista or Mr. Breyer? I did it again.
It's okay. I have a question for you. The proposed reduced tax assessment is now 1,174,000, I guess? Yes. And you're proposing 1,050,000. Where's that number coming from?
To be honest with you, I was asked to put a number in, and when I looked at the 11 adjacent properties, I just basically took an average, and I mean, it comes from no scientific background, other than that I had to put a number in there. And I felt that the property that I was dealing with the most for comparison is still 292, basically because it's the same classification of house. And considering that their assessment is at 1.1 and it's larger, I felt I should be less than that. So yeah, I took 50,000 off. That's how that number came about.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Okay. And so now we are moving into argument summation, and I will start with the complainant.
Sorry, I had a Sir
Sorry,
rebuttal.
what did I miss?
Sir rebuttal, R2.
Oh, right, my apologies. Why am I'm sorry. I know. Okay, my apologies. So we're going into R2. And this is new for us. This is a Sir rebuttal, which I have not seen before, nor have my colleagues. So, go ahead, Ms. Bannerman.
Sure. So just for some background, Sir rebuttal is allowed under the principles of natural justice, although there's no deadline contemplated in the Municipal Government Act or matters relating to assessment complaints regulation. It still is, as mentioned, a principle of natural justice, and there's several court decisions that verify the admissibility of such. So in the complainant's rebuttal, they referenced additional properties that weren't brought forward in their original complaint form or in their disclosure material. So the Sir rebuttal was intended just to bring forward some property information specific to those properties and, rather than asking the board to omit the information that was introduced as new evidence, we decided rather just to respond to it. And in my error, I did not read the part that said from this to this property, so I don't have the information available on the additional 10 properties that were brought forward by the complainant, but I do have the information for number, 288 Grizzly Crescent. And rebuttal was only presented or is only presented 3 days prior to the hearing. So it's a short time period, especially when we were in hearings yesterday as well. So the property at 288 Grizzly, which I'll address, is it's a different type of property as well from the subject property. It's a bi-level. It has smaller above grade area, smaller garage. So the property is only actually 1,452 square feet versus the subject properties, which is 2,142 square feet. So that's all I wanted to bring forward in the SIR rebuttal, and apologies, I would have brought forward the additional, I think, 10 properties to show the differences in the property characteristics, which result in differences in the property assessment.
Thank you. So that moves us to argument summation now. I'm looking for eyes, yes, am I correct? Okay, thank you. Wing woman. So we'll start with the complainant.
I'll just briefly respond to the last comment about 288, and I do agree with her summation that it is a different type of property. It's considered a bi-level. In reality, it is still a larger house. I just want to make sure that you understand it is a larger house, but due to the way things are evaluated, my house is an above-ground house, so they count what would be the basement as living space. So while she's correct that it is, I think 1450 something was the upper level, if you were to put that house on the market with a realtor, that would be advertised as a house larger than mine. It's just by nature of the rules that a bi-level, they do not count the basement, but I just want to clarify that. The other thing is she mentioned that the garage was smaller, and that's kind of almost a comical thing, because I was able to get my assessment lowered by making my garage space larger, so all of a sudden now it's become not in my favor anymore. I find that comical, but anyway, in closing though, I'll thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to do this, and all I'm asking for is fairness. And at this stage of the game, excuse me, I feel that I'm paying more than my fair share. And I'm quite happy to pay my fair share. I've been doing it for 35 years here. And, I love being here. This is the town I live in. But I just wanted some fairness. And I'm not asking for a lot. I just want to be the same as my neighbors. And the last comment I want to make, and I made this once already, I would be very saddened to think that the only outcome of this is that the neighbors adjacent to me have an increased tax because of me, and because we're all friends and I have to live there. So in closing, thank you for giving me the opportunity again. I have nothing more to say.
Thank you so much, sir. Moving on to the respondent.
Sure. So I just wanted to clarify something for the complainant as well. So if the board does agree to the recommended revised value, or if they do make a change to the property assessment, that would be for this year. So that change would be, in effect, you'd receive a revised assessment notice for the current year, not for next year. So in closing, we respectfully submit that the 2024 recommended assessment of $1,174,000, it is in line with provincial legislation. It's based on sound appraisal methodology, and it's supported by verified time-adjusted comparables and equitable in relation to similar properties in the town of Canmore. So the differences in the property characteristics, such as living area. Living area is more valuable than a garage, but that being said, Garages still do add value on a per square foot basis. This subject property's particular garage, it's very, very deep, so that it used to be, maybe it used to be a workshop, but whatever it is, it's a fairly large garage, and does add value to the property. So when we're comparing the properties and stating that the garage size is larger for the subject property versus the others, that's not to diminish the fact that the living area still is more valuable than the garage area. It's just to state that, yes, the garage actually area it does contribute to the value. So that being said, we do feel that the comparables that we've provided do support the property assessment for the subject property, and we respectfully ask the board to revise the 2024 assessment to $1,174,000. Thank you.
Thank you. And you have the last word, sir. Last word to summate.
I have nothing more to add that I haven't already said, so with respect to your time, I will stop here.
It's all right. We just want to make sure everybody has ample opportunity, and
Thank you.
that's the whole point of the hearing, is the whole, we talked about natural justice, procedural fairness. We want to make sure people feel that throughout the process. Not just say it, but actually demonstrate it. Perfect. Okay. So thank you for your cooperation and your helpful presentations. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing.
Yes, I have, and again, thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Bannerman?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we're going to move on to the next hearing. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Stay dry. off that whole time. Do you want me to start again? I should probably start again. I didn't realize I didn't have the mic off, and since the recording is the public record, I'll try to be quicker. Welcome to the Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be a record of the hearing. We are here today to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll number 15606 at number 5 Eagle Landing. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Joanna McCallum, and I am the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are Andrea Williams and Christoph Breyer. Does anyone have any objection to the panel as constituted? No. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please state for the record your name and your role in the hearing? Please indicate whether you're the owner of the property under complaint.
My name is Craig McClure, and I am the owner of the property.
Let's try again. Hold
I've
on.
lived
Say it
in-
again. I had to get your mic on. I'm sorry.
Oh, my name is Craig McClure. I'm the owner of the property. I've lived at that 5 Eagle Landing for 23 years, and I appreciate the opportunity to participate in this process.
Thank you. And now the respondent. Would you state for the record your name, organization, and your position with the municipality?
Sure. My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I am the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you, Ms. Bannerman. So the standard practice for the LARB is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then the panel. Next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed once again by questions from yourself and then the panel. And then the complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final arguments and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first and having the last word. If anyone needs a break or if a problem comes up, please let us know. If you need time, you have, computer problems, whatnot. We just want to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to present fully. And I would like to remind everyone to turn off their cell phones. So, are there any questions regarding the procedure, and are you satisfied with the process as it's been laid out?
Yes,
Excellent.
or no question.
So I see that both parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing. To save time, I propose that we mark all the documents for the record now. And that won't stop anyone raising questions about admissibility later. If any questions arise, we can still deal with them and strike material from the record later if necessary. If everyone is comfortable with this procedure, I will start to mark the evidence. So we have your original complainant form right here. We're going to mark that as C1. And then we have the assessment inquiry submission complainant package C2. We're going to mark that. And then we have the assessment review board respondent disclosure that we're going to mark as R1 evidence. And then finally, the complainant package, the rebuttal, we're going to mark that as C3. Everybody good? I don't drop everything? Excellent. All right. Okay, Mr. McClure. You're welcome to start. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I appreciate your time. And this is 5 Eagle Landing. It's nothing special. It's from R1, presented by the respondent. Where this started is that I have lived, as I mentioned, for 23 years in the same house, which is the smallest house on the block. And tax assessed values have been going up and up and up. And so in my C2, I guess, R document, did a quick analysis of the comparables that were provided by the respondent and simple averages. If we have, there was 11 different properties that were provided as comparables, and they're all larger than mine. And I did an average of the dollars per square foot, which is apparently $286 higher than less than what I am paying. So I believe that this is an outlier. In my document, here I'm just gonna pop over back to C3, which is my response, which summarizes my original submission. And I don't know if that's big enough for you to see, but what I wanted to do is have everyone on the same page, because I know there's a lot of paper. But in my original assessment, all I did was I want to know, explain the modified, so this is the request from my original submission. Please explain how the modified market cost approach was used to evaluate my property in relation to the comparable properties, including details of the factors used. And you can get into the details of mathematics and statistics, and also explain the error checking methods used across this method, which could result from the market modified cost approach. Now, I don't think we need to get into the fact of why the market modified cost approach is used. That was explained in the previous, hearing. But I'm okay with that method. I think the method is used across the province. It's the method that the government of Alberta has chosen to use. My question is, where do the details come in? So in the information I got from the respondent is that my property is different. There are property differences, which is what the modified cost approach uses. I would just like to know what the cost value for dollars is for those different property differences. Basically, my property assessed value is $1,772,000. I'd like to know why it's not $1,770,000 or $1.8 million or $1.3 million. The property differences that my property has are it backs onto Cougar Creek, it has a walkout basement, and it has a secondary suite. Great. What is the dollar value of each one of those differences, and how does that relate to my property assessed value? So the respondent gave me some information and said, this is the valuation of assessment through comparable sales, and it appears that 4 of these other properties have walkout basements, which was not provided to me the first time when I got the comparables. And so of these 4 properties with walkout basements, only 132 Eagle Terrace Road has the walkout basement noted in the quality adjustment on the residential rate payer report. 3 of them are listed in this spreadsheet that was provided to me, but are not on the residential rate payer report, which calls into question the accuracy of the comparable properties and potentially the accuracy of the entire method. As well, the respondent claims in R1 to have demonstrated support for the assessed value. I quote, "As demonstrated, the differences between the assessment of the subject property and neighboring homes are attributable to differences in property characteristics, including, but not limited to, the presence of, previously mentioned, walkout basement, secondary suite, and a premium location backing onto Cougar Creek." There's no demonstration. Oops. There's just the fact that we have these property differences. What is the assessment dollar value of a walkout basement? What's the assessment dollar value of a secondary suite? What is the assessment value of backing onto Cougar Creek? All I'm looking for is details to understand how this assessment got calculated at $1.772 million. As mentioned, I agree with the assessment. I just want to know the details, down to the dollars. So what I got back is the residential ratepayer report for 5 Eagle Landing. It's backing onto Cougar Creek, but there is no mention of a walkout basement on my ratepayer report. I apologize for the quality of the ratepayer report, but this is the quality that I got. It's really hard to read, but I am highlighting a few things. So I've got this area. I am a value base in the residential detached district, and I back onto a creek, and I have a walkout basement. It's a semi-custom home. The garage is standard, and here is the assessed value. There are no details about how this assessed value was obtained. As a comparison, one of the other properties that was comparable was 236 Eagle Landing Road, or Eagle Terrace Road. Its lot size is much larger than Eagle Landing, but the value base, as shown on the ratepayer report, is a residential, single detached, small lot district. Well, if it's in a small lot district, but its lot size is bigger than mine, I'm not sure how that makes sense. And I'd also like to know, what does that small lot district property assessment value mean in terms of dollars? The garage is 638 square feet, which is much larger than 5 Eagle Landing. And it's got custom finishing as opposed to standard finishing for 5 Eagle Landing. The house size is 2,291 square feet versus 1,582 square feet. Much larger, but they both are semi-custom finishings. And the assessment value is $1.72 million, which is $52,000 less than 5 Eagle Landing. You know, the property's 4 years newer, but it's still over 20 years old, so I don't think that's a factor. Just want to highlight that. There's the size, there's the lot area, here is the small lot district, and it's custom, and there's the smaller assessed value. Another one is 7 Terrace Place. Its lot size is 7,799 square feet, which is much bigger than Eagle Landing, and it's also still in the small lot district. What does that mean? The garage is basically the same, but it has custom finishing. The house size is 22,355 square feet versus 1,582 square feet, both with custom finishings. It's much bigger. It has a walkout basement listed on the comparable spreadsheet, but there's no walkout basement mentioned on the residential ratepayer report. The assessment value is $1.829 million, which is $57,000 more than mine. What I did was I took all the comparables that the respondent provided and put them into a spreadsheet to compare them. Here's that spreadsheet. I'll apologize for how small it is, but what I did was I did comparisons on the lot size, the square dollars per lot area, the value base. I would like to know what this small lot is. Virtually all of them are small lots. The floor area and the finishing, they're all semi-custom, so that isn't a factor. The garage, about the same. And so what I did was I compared the lot, so I'll make this bigger. The lot area percent difference, taking into account 13 Eagle Landing, which is the first one in the row, it's pretty much the same size. The dollars per lot area are pretty much the same. The floor area percentage difference is 31% greater. Everything that's greater than 20% has been highlighted in red in the spreadsheet. The dollars per floor area percent difference is 19% less compared to 5 Eagle Landing. The garage is 2% bigger, and the 2025 assessment is $100,000 more, which is 6% more. I went through all the properties, and you have the spreadsheet in front of you. In the interests of time, I'm just going to go through the summary, which is the average. The average size is, the average lot size is exactly the same. Oops. Basically 7 square feet different, so the percentage difference is negligible. So the lot doesn't play a factor in the assessment. And same with the dollars per lot. However, missed that here. The floor area, the average floor area across all these comparable properties is 39% bigger than 5 Eagle Landing, and the dollars per square foot is 25% lower than 5 Eagle Landing. The garage, it's about 10% different. It's not that much different. There are a lot of differences here in the floor area percent difference. You can see highlighted in red, virtually all the properties except for one have in this case, much larger square foot area. and the dollars per square foot is much, much less. I think we can conclude that Five Eagle Landing is an outlier, and that error checking should have been in place as part of this method that we use to identify this and rectify this. Continuing on through C3, the response, the observations that I made, average size lot, average size garage, all the properties are about the same age. The floor area average floor area, again, is 39% greater than Five Eagle Landing, and the dollar per square foot average is 25% less. So to summarize, I have in my property these property differences. It backs onto Cougar Creek, it has a walkout basement, and it has a secondary suite. I believe that the assessor must be able to answer the questions to accurately assess Five Eagle Landing at $1,772,000. What is the assessment dollar value of a walkout basement? And as noted earlier, the data that was provided is inconsistent, possibly inaccurate. What is the assessment dollar value of a secondary suite? Apparently, none of the other comparables have a secondary suite, but given the accuracy of the walkout basement information, I wonder how correct that assumption is. What is the dollar value for an assessment of backing onto Cougar Creek versus backing onto green space versus none? What is the assessment dollar value of the value-based residential single detached small lot district versus residential detached district, which is what Five Eagle Landing is in? And what is the assessment dollar value of a custom finished garage versus a standard finished garage? Obviously, this property assessment model is used across the town to assess all the properties. I agree with the method, I just want to know the details. And I don't think it's unreasonable for the respondent to provide details on how the property differences affect the overall property assessment in terms of dollar values. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have any questions from the respondent with regards to
No
the
questions.
evidence?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board, my panelists?
I've just got one question, sorry. And I think I missed this, so I apologize.
Oh.
The listing of the properties that you have on, all in Eagle Heights, I guess, or in Eagle Landing. Is this a list that you came up with of comparable properties, or?
No, it's the list that was provided from
And so then you
the
went
town,
and ran
yeah.
your analysis based on?
I was happy to use the same comparables.
Right, okay, great.
I don't think it's a comparable issue, I think it's a data analysis issue.
Right, okay. And that's it, sorry.
No worries, don't be
Thank you.
sorry. Excellent. All right, and now it is time for the respondent to provide their evidence.
Sure, thank you. So today I'm going to present and demonstrate to the board that assessments must be prepared annually, that the valuation standard applied is market value as of July 1st, 2024, and that assessments must be prepared in a fair and equitable manner. So on pages 4 through 7, we've got a photo of the exterior of the property as well as some aerial maps to show where the location of the subject property is in relation to their neighborhood. The subject property is a detached residential home located at 5 Eagle Landing, and it backs onto Cougar Creek. It was constructed in 1998, and it's zoned R1, which is residential detached zoning, and the assessed value for 2024 is $1,772,000. So now for a bit of background on the assessment process. This can be found on pages 8 through 11. So assessments in the town of Canmore are legislatively governed by the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulation. The legislation requires that assessments reflect the market value as of July 1st, 2024, and the physical condition as of December 31st, 2024. The legislation further stipulates that an assessment of property based on market value must be prepared using mass appraisal. It must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in the property, and it must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. Mass appraisal involves grouping similar properties, identifying common characteristics, and applying standardized models to ensure consistency and fairness. This methodology is well supported both in the legislation and assessment best practices. So now on pages 10 through 12, the market modified cost approach is used for the subject property in the valuation for the assessment. This approach blends the replacement cost estimates with adjustments derived from local validated market sales. It mirrors real buyer and seller behavior in the town of Canmore's housing market, and it is the most appropriate valuation method for detached residential properties within the town of Canmore. We analyzed valid sales from Land Titles Office occurring between July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024, and these were adjusted for time to reflect the July 1st, 2024 valuation date. This provided the basis for developing our valuation model and ultimately deriving the assessment of $1,772,000 for this property. So now on page 12, the subject property is a 1,582 square foot, semi-custom two-story and basement home built in 1998 in the Eagle Terrace neighborhood, and as mentioned, it backs onto Cougar Creek. The subject property has a walkout basement as well as a basement suite.
Can I ask a question, or?
We will in a minute, yeah, you'll have your moment.
Sure. So on pages 13 to 18, we have our analysis and argument. So the subject property at 5 Eagle Landing is assessed at, as mentioned, $1,772,000. To determine whether this assessment is fair and reflective of market value, we compared it to several recent sales of similar properties in the area. And those are the sales that were used by the complainant. We're using the same sales. So these sales were provided to the complainant during the original inquiry period prior to the complaint being filed. So these comparable properties share key characteristics with the subject, such as being two-story detached homes with basement, built in the late 1990s to early 2000s. Several of them have walkout basements, which is identified on the chart that I've provided. There were, the walkout basement doesn't necessarily appear on the ratepayer reports. However, I can verify that these properties do have walkout basements and they are being adjusted in the same manner as the subject property. These properties also share similar lot sizes. The comparable property at 13 Eagle Landing also backs onto Cougar Creek, which is similar to the subject property. While some of the comparable homes are larger in size, the subject property includes features that are highly valued in the Canmore market, most notably a legal basement suite and a walkout basement, and of course the location backing onto Cougar Creek. These elements contribute significantly to its market value and make it competitive with larger homes that may not include these premium attributes. Furthermore, the adjusted sale prices of the comparable properties all fall within a reasonable range around the subject's assessment. This demonstrates that the market supports the assessed value and confirms that the valuation is in line with how buyers are acting in the marketplace. There was a question by the complainant during their presentation regarding the residential detached small lot district. And so the difference between the small lot district and the regular residential R1 zoning, these are zoning laws set out by town planning and approved by town council in their land use bylaw. So what this does is it identifies what the permitted use is of the land. So in both cases, regardless of the differences in zoning, there really aren't much differences between the R1 and the residential detached small lot district. It is just purely a difference according to the land use bylaw. But when we're looking at valuation, as mentioned by the complainant, there's no noticeable difference in the lot sizes between the two zones. So now on page 15, or my page 15, so the complainant argues that their property has a higher assessment on a per square foot basis, although it is one of the smallest homes on the block. I just want to bring forward and point out that a per square foot comparison is not a reliable method of assessment in a mass appraisal system, because our approach accounts for all of the property characteristics, not just the living area of the property. These features impact the market value, such as the walkout basement, the basement suite backing onto Cougar Creek. They impact the market value regardless of overall square footage. And so this method does not consider the property characteristics between the properties that also contribute to the overall value. Using a lot or a unit of comparison approach is only relevant when comparing identical properties to each other. So case law and board precedents, including Tony Prysa versus the City of Edmonton E-LARB decision, supports the rejection of a price per square foot as a valuation method, stating that it is not sufficient to simply take an average per square foot value of neighboring properties and apply that average to the subject property without taking into account differing characteristics of the property. Nor is it sufficient to apply the same value per square foot to the subject property to the south as that is a larger property, and I'm reading the decision. So, taking an average square foot of the neighboring properties does not take into account any adjustments for features of those neighboring properties which differ from the subject. So while the complainant's property does have one of the lower assessments, assessed values provided on the comparable list, its higher price per square foot is a result of several contributing factors. Specifically, as mentioned, the property features a basement suite, which is highly desirable in the town of Canmore. It has a walkout basement, and it backs onto Cougar Creek. All of these factors add value and are not present in many of the comparable properties. Additionally, the property has a smaller total floor area paired with a relatively larger lot size, which further influences the assessment when viewed in isolation. We emphasize that the average price per square foot is not a reliable valuation metric on its own. Our evaluation models consider a wide range of property-specific characteristics to ensure fairness and equity across all assessments. So the complainant did request, or they have brought forward issues in their presentation regarding the actual costs or the actual dollar amounts that each different variable or property characteristic contributes to value. I just want to point out to the property owner that this is not the avenue to receive that information. This information is available through the MGA through an access to information request through sections 299 and 300. If they choose to go that route, that information would be made available by the town. So there was mention about Cougar Creek that was brought forward by the complainant about the traffic and noise from the trail. Although it wasn't mentioned in his presentation, I just do want to highlight that a little bit since it was in his disclosure. And while we understand the complainant's concerns about traffic and noise from the trail, the market does see this location as desirable, not detrimental to the market value of the property. Properties backing onto natural features like Cougar Creek typically command a premium, and that's supported by market data. So in conclusion, the assessment was prepared in accordance with the legislation using mass appraisal and market value principles. We provided reliable comparable sales that support the assessed value. The differences between the assessments are due to actual differences in the property features, not in equity. And the complainant's valuation method of a per unit basis is flawed, and it does not align with legislated or professional standards. For all of these reasons, we respectfully request that the board confirm the 2024 assessment of $1,772,000 as fair, equitable, and legislatively compliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Where are we now? Yeah, questions from the complainant. If you have any questions for her?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that all the properties are two-story houses, but 5 Eagle Landing is a bi-level split, which is different. You also mentioned that there was a reasonable range of values for the property assessments. What is considered a reasonable range in terms of a percentage difference?
So we have the property at 5 Eagle Landing classified as a two-story with basement property, as well as all of the other properties that were submitted by both the complainant and the respondent. There's been no mention during the inquiry period or from the complainant's disclosure or up to this point to suggest that it's a different classification or structure classification. So I can't comment on that. And for the second question that the complainant has posed, I would say that there's no specific percentage that would be applicable when determining whether it is a reliable range of values. It is specific to the different property characteristics, looking at them in comparison with the subject property characteristics, and looking at the range of values that we've provided on the assessment side for the total assessment, as well as the sale prices, indicating that the subject property is correctly assessed.
So you had a question? Sorry, I
ahead.
wasn't sure. You just brought something up, so I just wasn't sure if there was something that wasn't working well with the presentation.
The first point that couldn't be answered, I didn't understand.
Okay, sorry, continue. She just had spoken, and I wasn't sure if there was something wrong with the presentation that wasn't working well. Thank you. Continue, Mr. McClurg.
Sure, so just to clarify, there's no reasonable range of values. You guys just kind of do one of these to make sure everything's okay?
Nope, that's not correct. So when we're looking at valuing the properties, we are looking at all of the property characteristics as part of the mass appraisal process. We are taking all of the sales of properties, we're developing mass appraisal models, and we're applying those same models back to all of the comparable properties. So the only differences in the property assessments are due to the differences in the property characteristics themselves. So when we're preparing assessments, we don't use a thumb kind of approach. We're looking at the data, and we're looking at the sales, and we're deriving assessment models based on that.
Yes, you've just demonstrated or described the method that you use. And then you said after we have the method, we always make sure that there's a reasonable range of values. And that leads me to my question of how's the error checking done to make sure that there's no outliers on any of these assessment values?
Yeah, so a lot of times, well, actually, all the time, we are actually audited by the provincial government. So all of our assessments must meet the legislated ratio statistics, which means that the overall assessments for the stratums fall between 95 and 105% of the sale prices. And we do sales checks as well, like we verify all of our sales to make sure that they're accurately depicting the quality of data that is in there. We also do regular re-inspections to ensure that our data is up to date and current. And we get permit information from the town planning area as well to ensure that any updates or changes to the properties are reflected in the property assessments. So it's not a subjective kind of process. It's highly legislated, including the audit process, which we pass on an annual basis. If we didn't, we wouldn't be able to send out assessment notices, and the town wouldn't be able to collect the revenue from for taxation.
So again, you're just describing the process. You're not talking about after the process is done, what kind of error checking it's done, other than the audit by the provincial government. I
Yeah,
would
and we
expect
do our
that
own-
There would be some error checking done before the assessments go out.
Yeah, and we do. We look at our assessments, obviously, before it gets to the audit stage. We do our own internal audits, and we're looking at, assessment to sales ratios. We're looking at percent changes from year to year with the assessment changes. We're constantly looking at updating our property data to ensure that the data reflected on each property is correct. So I'm not sure exactly the point you're trying to make with your question. However, we do have many checks and balances that we have in place to ensure that the assessments that go out are correct and fair.
Okay, and then you mentioned the 95% to 105% range on sales values. How does that apply to 5 Eagle Landing?
Since the property did not sell, we are looking at all the sales of similar properties to number 5 Eagle Landing, as mentioned, as part of the mass appraisal process. We're looking at all of the sales of properties to develop these valuation models. So we take all of the knowns, which are the sales, and we apply them back to the unknowns, which are the properties that didn't sell. And we apply those models back to the unknowns and the solds, the knowns, in an equitable manner, so that the only difference between the property assessments are due to the differences in the property characteristics themselves.
Yeah, and how does that fit into that range? I wasn't clear on that.
For your property, there would be no sale. There's no recent sale of the subject property, so it would not fit into that range. Instead, we are using that range to test the models for all of the properties that did sell. That assessment to sales ratio is just that. It's a comparison between the assessment and the sale prices,
that
adjusted
range-
to the July 1st, 2024 date.
So that range is used to validate the sales that are used as inputs to the model?
That's correct.
Okay. And lastly, I kind of was expecting to have a transparent process, but if I have to go through an Access to Information Act to get the details on why those property differences to figure out what the dollar value is, can you just please confirm that? You're not going to tell me what the difference is? There's no information around how my property was assessed at $1,772,000 other than I have to go through an Access to Information procedure.
Yeah, and so I can confirm that the town of Canmore has a fee set out for that type of information in their fee bylaw. So it's not information that I can provide outside of the fee bylaw. In addition to that, when we're talking about your property assessment, and you did state in your presentation earlier that you don't have any issue with the assessed value of your property. What your issue is
I said the assessment process, not the value. I have a problem with the value.
okay, I stand corrected, that's what I heard. But the information that we prepared and provided to both yourself and to the board through the complaint process and through the inquiries as well prior to a complaint being filed, it does show a good level of information about all the subject property, as well as the information regarding the sales comparables. We've provided details as to what the differences are between your property and those properties and why yours would achieve a premium, backing onto Cougar Creek with the walkout basement and the basement suite. So we've provided a good amount of information to help you understand how your assessment was prepared. If you do want to get the detailed calculations, the only avenue is to go through the section 299-300 request through the town.
Great. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, sir. Does the board or any of my colleagues have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Breyer.
I have only one question. In your C3 summary, it shows on the...
So these are questions to the respondent.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We can ask questions from the rebuttal after this. Yeah, no worries. Do you have any questions? Look at that. Here we go.
Just a question of clarification, I guess, on the section 299, section 300 process, just given that we're talking about it. Is this something that a complainant would be made aware of when they're going through this process?
Not necessarily. So during the complaint process, if a property is under appeal, there's no deadlines. Normally, there's a deadline of 15 days for the assessor to provide this information to a property owner. During the complaint process, this timeline doesn't exist anymore. It actually falls to after the complaint has been filed. But during the inquiry period, if the property owner had brought forward questions regarding the detailed calculations of his property assessment, we certainly would have referred him to that avenue. This information is also available on the town website for people who want to go that route. I just do have to say, though, the Section 299 and 300 request, although it does provide the detailed calculations of the property assessments, it doesn't necessarily provide any additional clarity on the assessment other than what a specific component is for contributing to that particular assessment. When we're looking at them, we are looking at all of the different property characteristics and how they fall in line with the comparables that we've provided. And in the case of the subject property, they do fall in line even without knowing how much a basement suite or their basement suite would contribute to value, or a walkout basement, or the factor for the backing Cougar Creek. The fact is that the property comparables that we've provided all support the subject property's assessment.
Okay, I have a question also about your evidence on page 12 and 13. I just wonder if you could clarify what the interplay is between, if we look on page 12, we've got a residential influence of 2013 flood, and then we've got another residential influence of River Creek. So I wonder if you could just talk about the interplay between those two.
Sure. So we do have the 2013 flood information for those properties that were subject to flooding back in the big Canmore flood. It doesn't make a difference to the value, but we've kept that attribute on there just for our records. Assessors tend to love historical information. We don't like to get rid of anything on the system, especially if it's something that was pretty significant to the property in at the time. So there's no interplay between the two, since there's no impact to the value. We discussed yesterday, this flood was, 12 years ago, so it's no longer any of the issues that were found through flooding on that property have long since been repaired. So there's no impact to the market value per se, even though it does show up on this report. For the River Creek, they do back onto Cougar Creek. That was demonstrated in the maps that we have, and that is that does contribute to the value of the property. It is desirable to back onto Cougar Creek. So that's why it's there.
So the property would have a factor applied to it because it was more desirable for backing onto Cougar Creek, but not anything taken off it for the fact of the 2013 flood, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So it's getting an increase in its value due to backing onto Cougar Creek versus a property that doesn't back onto Cougar Creek. And it's also, like mentioned, the 2013 flood was 12 years ago, and any issues with condition of the property due to that flooding have long since been repaired. In addition, the complainant hasn't raised that there was any condition issues as a result of the flood 12 years ago.
Okay, my question was more relating around the factors that were shown on the ratepayer report, but there's no numbers assigned to them, so. I also just have a question in regard to your evidence about, on page, where are we? the units of comparison.
Which page is that?
Is page 15.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a comment that using a unit comparison analysis to adjust one property is misleading. So I guess my question for you is, in your table on page 13, where we've got these comparable properties, if you're not comparing them on a price per square foot or a price related to land value, comparing the land values, how are you doing the comparison?
So when we're comparing them, we're looking at them being similar properties to the subject property in terms of quality of construction and finishing, both two-story with basement homes in the same neighborhood as the subject property. So when we provided those as comparables, as mentioned, that was originally during the inquiry period before a complaint was filed. So when we're looking at them in terms of comparability, we're looking at the year that they were built. Is it similar to the subject property? Yes. We're looking at the lot area. You know, you can see that the larger lot areas, the larger square footage, they're assessed higher than the subject property. And so that's what we had meant when we had provided these comparables, is that they're showing that the overall assessment, the total assessment for each of these properties, given the differences in the property characteristics between them, which we've highlighted the majority of the property characteristics, the assessment for the subject property is reasonable in comparison to the properties that sold, if that makes sense.
Yes, but if the properties were similar, so obviously these properties are all in a very tight neighborhood, they're close together. And if it was established through the records that the standard of construction, their size, their all of the factors that you're evaluating are similar, would using a price per square foot not be a comparable unit, an acceptable method to compare them?
Yeah, and as mentioned, if they were similar, then you could look at it on a basis of a per square foot basis. They had similar lot sizes. If they all had basement suites, they all had walkout basements, they all backed Cougar Creek, then looking at it on a per square foot basis would be more reliable, because the only difference would be then the size. The other part of that is that, and I've included it in my disclosure, I think on page 15 and 16, there's also the principle of diminishing returns that come into when we're looking at a per unit basis. So a smaller property is naturally going to, according to appraisal theory and according to what we see through the sales, a smaller property is also going to have a higher per square foot value than a larger property. And so the reason for this is that as they're added, or each input variable, so size, as each square foot increases, the additional value or utility gained from the new units decrease. So we see this often in land, just as an easy example to kind of show that. The price per square foot, and this goes with square footage of living area as well, but as the price per square foot does not continue to exponentially go up at the same rate for, say, a 6,000 square foot lot versus a 50,000 square foot lot. There's always going to be a curve in there that's determining that these additional units of contribution are not going to be as valuable as once that utility is met in the basic size, I guess, if that makes sense.
It does, thank you. I've got no more questions.
And so what is that curve?
One
How
moment,
do we?
we'll let you ask your questions in a minute, just 1 second. I get to ask my questions now.
Okay.
It's my turn. So I have a couple of questions with regards to your disclosure. On page 12, is the residential ratepayer report. And I just want to confirm what I heard earlier. So where it states value base under market land, and it says residential detached district, what that is, the nomenclature for is the actual land use zoning, and it should correspond within the land use bylaw, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's not a descriptor on the assessor's end, that's just sort of what it's referred to? Because, yeah.
Yes, it's strictly taken out of the land use
Okay.
bylaw, so that's
Thank
the
you.
name of the R1
Yeah,
zoning.
excellent. And then, also on, so would every home that faces Cougar Creek have on it the residential influence of the 2013 flood? Or only the homes that were affected by the 2013 flood?
Only the homes that were affected by the 2013 flood.
Which is pretty much everything there.
It was pretty close to everything.
Yeah, I was there. I wasn't there, but I was like here. And then, is it typical that for all municipalities to require a FOIP request to understand the makeup of one's assessment, or is that a Canmore thing?
No, it's part of Alberta legislation, so big cities, that's how, like all municipalities, that is the process for requesting
Just I've
detailed
never heard it
calculations.
being used, and so I was just curious as to, I don't even think we that we talked about this in assessment school, or ARB school, so. not that
Sure,
that's what it's called, but-
yeah, and just to be clear, this is for the detailed calculations. This isn't for assessment information, it's for the detailed calculations
Yeah,
of
no,
the assessments.
I understand. I appreciate that. And then, page 5, hold on, I have one more. Nope. Is it over here? No, those were all my questions, thank you. And so, now that we have moved, so the respondent has provided evidence, the complainants provided questions, the board has asked questions, and now it is time for the complainant to provide any rebuttal evidence. Yes. Correct, yes, that is the, because I know that you had another question, and I was wondering where that would fit in the process, since the questions were already up for.
It's a question and response to the.
Yeah, so why don't actually, before we move into the rebuttal evidence, that the complainant can ask an additional question based on the evidence that you brought on. Ms. Bannerman?
Thank you. You mentioned a utility curve and diminishing returns on the increase in square foot of a property. I wondered if you had any values for that, or do I have to go through a FOIP request to get that information?
So the models are developed anew each year, as mentioned. Every year's assessment process, according to Alberta legislation, is a new year. So when we're looking at the values, we're looking at the sales, and we're looking at all the property characteristics, as mentioned. And so all of these models get developed anew each year. So the valuation for the land, the valuation for the improvement. So this isn't, even the curve is not available, and it's different depending on the different market areas as well that we have within the town. So this isn't information that is available.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, sir, if you have any rebuttal evidence, now is your opportunity to present it.
I came to the hearing expecting to get details of how my property was assessed. I expected to get more details than I was provided. We understand that there are 3 property differences that affect my property. I back onto Cougar Creek, I have a walkout basement, and I have a secondary suite. That's all I've gotten today. There is no details and no information around why my property assessed value is $1,772,000, as opposed to $1,770,000, or $1.8 million, or $1.3 million. I have to say, I did find out that I can submit a FOIP request to get more information. It would, if I may make a recommendation, maybe people who apply could be given that information in advance so that we would know about that. And apparently you didn't know about it either. So yeah, my rebuttal is there is no detail I guess the only thing that I do want to say is in the previous hearing for 292 Grizzly Crescent, the respondent stated, I quote, "living area is more valuable." And so if we take a look at the different sizes of the properties, my property is the smallest by 39%, and living area is more valuable. And so those properties should be assessed higher rather than mine. But sadly, I don't think we'll find any details. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions from the respondent?
I don't have any questions. I just did want to make just one point to clarify for the property owner regarding the information request or the access to information request. He had mentioned that it's a FOIP request, and it is not. It is a Section 299-300 request through the MGA.
Oh, so I think I added the nomenclature of FOIP. Is that my error?
Yeah, it's not a FOIP request. It's specific to the Municipal Government Act.
Okay, that's my error of the FOIP. I apologize. I just assumed, and I shouldn't have assumed. My apologies.
Sure, no worries. I just didn't want
Learning
the
things
complainant,
after 15 years.
I just didn't want the complainant to go on a wild goose chase.
No,
so.
that's good information. I appreciate that. I'm just making a note here. Does the board have any questions of the complainant as rebuttal evidence? Go ahead, Mr. Christoph. Oh, we're playing games here. I got it.
Okay. Yes, I have one question. In the C1 document, you're asking for a requested assessed value, $1.37 million, and on document C3, you're asking $1.32 million. First question is, where's the difference coming from, and how did you come up with those numbers?
Unfortunately, in my original spreadsheet, I had an error. It was 866, but I didn't include it. I took the average of all these columns rather than just the average of these columns. That's for the differences in the square foot price. And the assessment value is the average square foot price times the square footage of my property.
So which one is the correct number now?
834.
And which one is the correct requested assessed value?
It's in the most recent information from the C3.
Okay.
1 point.
But I'd take either one.
No, I just want to clarify.
It is C3, yes.
C3. Okay.
So the correct assessed value is, well, it's this one, 1.32.
Thank you.
Okay. I apologize for the confusion and the error.
You're not the first one. I think people get the initial package out, and then as they're doing more of their due diligence, they realize that the numbers don't always line up. Okay, so do you have any questions? I don't have any questions. So we move into summation, and we start with the complainant.
Well, first of all, thank you for your time. I know you're very busy and there's a lot of people that want to go through this process. I appreciate being allowed to participate in the process, and I'm sadly disappointed by the amount of detail provided in the process. I was expecting a transparent process, but no details are provided. I will submit a request to get the information. Can we put my hearing or my complaint on hold until I get that information?
No, I think this is the hearing date. Yeah, so after we go through all of this, basically, we are going to, we'll close the hearing after this, and so the hearing is closed. I would suggest that maybe the information that you get through section 299 might be valuable moving forward, or if you choose to appeal next year, or you choose another route. But for this process, this is the hearing date, this is the hearing time, and we need to close the hearing at the end of the presentation. If there were some extenuating circumstances, like somebody got hit by a car or something like that, then we, no. But I mean, like, things that are outside of control, but this has been educational for me as well. But we will be closing the hearing after the end of this process, so no.
Okay.
I had to talk through that to figure out what my final answer was. You can continue your summation if you like, or we can defer to the respondent, and then you can have the last word.
No, my summation is just that I'm really disappointed in the transparency of the information, and that's all.
Yep. And to the respondent?
Sure. So I just do want to clarify the quote that was provided by the complainant as to what I had mentioned in the previous hearing that we had this morning. He had quoted me as living area is more valuable. What my direct quote had been for that was living area is more valuable than garage area, just to clarify to the board and to the complainant as to what I had said. So just want to summarize, basically the assessment was prepared in accordance with the legislation using mass appraisal and market value principles. We've provided reliable comparable sales that support the overall assessed value. The differences between the assessments are due to the actual differences in the property features. They're not due to any inequity, as the same valuation models were applied to all of these properties. And the complainant's valuation method of looking at things on a per square foot basis, it doesn't align with appraisal best practices or with the legislation. We are required to prepare assessments looking at all of the property characteristics, not just at the living area square footage. This method also does not take into account the features that are present in the subject property, such as walkout basements and basement suites and backing onto Cougar Creek, that are not present in many of the comparables that were provided by both parties, being the same comparables. So for all these reasons, we respectfully request that the board confirms the 2024 assessment at $1,772,000. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll give you opportunity for to close if you like, and if you don't want to, you don't have to.
Oh, I certainly do. I have used the per square foot method because that's all I have data for. There is information, as we've heard, 3 distinct property differences for my home. I back onto Cougar Creek. I have a walkout basement and I have a secondary suite, but I have no way to assess how much that value is, the value of those things impact my property value. So I am left with going with the dollars per square foot. Sadly, I was expecting to get that information, and I would, I guess I would like the board to take that into account and to reduce the property assessed value for 5 Eagle Landing, because it's obviously an outlier and no one has been able to present any information otherwise, given that it has by far the lowest dollars per square foot. If I knew how much a secondary suite was worth, I would add it into this. If I knew how much a walkout basement was worth, I would add it in. But 4 of these properties do have a walkout basement, so I figure it's a wash in the average. And backing onto Cougar Creek, there's only one other one, and it is also much, anyway, we don't have any data, so I will leave it at that and let the board do what they need to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. So I want to thank everyone for their cooperation and for their helpful presentations. And at this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they have received a fair hearing. Starting with yourself, sir.
Well, I feel I've been heard, but I feel that the transparency of the data is sorely lacking, and it was not what I expected when I came here. As part of a democratic process, we should have access to information. Apparently, there's another process that I was not aware of, but I will be pursuing that avenue.
Thank you. And yourself, the respondent?
Yes, I'm satisfied. I feel I've been heard. Thank you.
I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and we're going to move on to our next hearing. Thanks. Have a great spring. Stay dry.
Yes, spring,
We're still
summer.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to the Canmore Local Assessment Review Board hearing. I would like to remind everyone that the ARB hearings are open to the public and that this hearing will be recorded and streamed live. The video recording will be our record of the hearing. Today, we are here to review the complaint and subsequent evidence as filed for tax roll number 17543, which is the address is 116 Durgis Gate. Yeah? No problemo. Showtime. Okay, so should I take it from the top, or? Okay, I'm just conscious because this is the record. Perfect. I'll start over again. It's at 17543 is the tax roll number, and the address is 116 Durgis Gate. I will start by introducing the panel and then ask the parties to introduce themselves. After that, I will explain our standard hearing procedure and ask for comments in that regard. My name is Joanna McCallum, and I am the presiding officer appointed to this panel. The other panel members with me today are Andrea Williams and Christophe Breyer. Do you have any objections to the panel as constituted? No. Thank you. I'm now going to have the parties introduce themselves, starting with the complainant. Would you please state for the record your name, organization, and your role in the hearing, and whether you are the owner of the property under complaint?
I am Daniel Thiemig. I am resident of Canmore.
Oh, sorry, let's try it again. Sorry, I didn't have your mic going in.
Okay. I'm Dan Thiemig. I live at 116 Dire Gas Gate, so it's my property.
Wonderful, thank you. And to the respondent?
Sure. My name is Deanne Bannerman. I'm with Legacy Municipal Services, and I'm the appointed assessor for the town of Canmore.
Thank you. The LARB standard practice is to have the complainant present all of their evidence first, followed by questions from the respondent and then from the panel. And then next, the respondent presents their evidence, followed by questions from yourself, and then questions from the panel. And then the complainant will have an opportunity for rebuttal to the respondent's statements. Finally, both parties will have an opportunity to present their final argument and summarize their evidence for the panel, with the complainant presenting first. So if anybody needs a break, or you have an IT issue or anything like that, please let me know as soon as possible, and we can address things as we go. And I would like to remind everyone to please turn off their mobile devices. So are there any questions, sir, with regards to the procedure today? No. Excellent. And so I see that the parties have exchanged disclosure evidence before the hearing, and we are going to now go through the evidence and mark it so that we're all on the same page. Quite literally. Your assessment review board complaint, we're going to mark that evidence as C1. And staff had a handy list. Oh, and then there's the respondent disclosure. And we're going to mark that as R1. And that is it. We're going to move forward. Are there any other preliminary issues for the panel to address? No? So we're going to start the presentation. So, Mr. Thiemig, did I say your name right?
It's close enough.
Thiemig? Okay, I was actually contemplating this last night when I was reading through your package. So, wanted to make sure the emphasis was on the right syllable. We're going to allow you to open and start with your evidence and your presentation, sir.
First, I'm going to state it, and in case I forget, but I'm sure I'll remember, there are some errors in the respondent and some numbers that are pretty significant.
Perfect. So that would be great for you to highlight that and
I'll
address
point those
that
out
through your
after
presentation.
she presents. So a couple of comments. The first is really kind of in supportive of some of the evidence I've submitted on page 15 of the respondent. They actually support part of what our challenge is for valuation, which is basically saying furniture, appliances are not included in the valuation. So that's my first comment on it. Second comment is that when we purchased this property, we purchased it, and as it turned out, it was a British couple, I believe, that had to leave under duress. As it turned out, they left, everything that was in the property was included in the sale. And year one, when we got the valuation, I did call into the city, whoever you talk to on valuations, and said, hey, why is our valuation so high? He basically said, well, that's a number we're gonna use. You know, so really non-responsive. I would have loved to have had this document to take down to him, and he could have said, well, who do I call? And I would have said, Marianne Kabetny. I don't know if you guys know her, but she's a realtor in town that we did the purchase from. So we weren't able to get that off the roll. So now we're 13 years later, and we've been carrying that on. So her comments were to us, when we did find out everything was included, she said, Dan, this is over $100,000 worth of stuff, top-notch beds and everything else. That was her comments. So what I used for my argument was 100,000. She thought it was at least that minimum. So I should also make a comment. My wife also called in, and her comments were, they just kind of blew me off when we tried to get that taken into consideration. So it's happened a couple of times. I probably should have done this 13 years ago, because we've been carrying this all the way. So you can see, you know, the kind of the quality of the stuff that was in here, all leather chairs and everything. Marianne said most of it was all purchased here in Canmore. And that was, as best I can tell her comments, there were paintings, art, you know, top-notch electronics and everything else in here. So based on this comment from, you know, a respondent and the proofs that I put in, you can go and look in detail. All the contents were included, and they were spectacular. The fact is that we've been kind of carrying this along. So if you now take this to where we're at today, and I know, Christopher, you're going to ask, how did I come up with the number? So I'll kind of take you a little bit through that. If you took our current valuation, and if you said, what's the $100,000, you know, interest at 8.5%, it comes out to $279,000. So that gets us really close to the number that I've presented to the board. And I mean, it's a compounding thing. And even though we had a discussion with them, that was never adjusted. So as I have seen our valuation move, it's, and the board may say something different, but it's, the houses are generally appreciated at 8.5%. May vary by different year, but that's kind of the number. It comes out really close. So for us, us as homeowners, we've been carrying this, and we weren't able to get rid of it at the start. So now here we are 13 years later. That now comes to a staggering $279,000 if you take an average 8.5% increase in property value. So we
Excuse me?
request from the board that, did just somebody say something?
Excuse me, I don't have this information that's on the screen.
Well, this is just the calculations. You've got all the background information for it.
I wasn't even looking at what was on the screen.
Yeah, this is just a calculation. It's, all the evidence is the evidence. You can go do your own calculations if you want, but you would know $100,000, you know, over 13 years at 8.5%, which is basically kind of the going rate of Canmore would come to that value. I can send it later, but it's just calculation.
I think what she's trying to point out is that this is actually additional evidence that you're putting up on the screen. And so if you were to just speak to it verbally, it would be one thing, but because it's visual evidence, and I wasn't even looking at it,
Okay.
I was looking at what was in the
Sorry,
package.
I'll-
Oh, no, that's all right. That's partially
I
my
mean, I'm
fault,
just-
because I should have
can
been
speak
looking
through-
at
I
what
can
was
speak
on.
through the numbers, but I thought if it's not additional evidence, it's what the claim was made, is that this has been carried through the entire, the math is the math. You can do it on a calculator, and it's pretty simple to do on it. But I
Okay.
won't,
Yeah,
I'll take that
and that's-
slide back.
Yeah,
then.
I think
I'll
that we should
apologize.
probably remove the slides.
And the one previous as well, which was the email from the Realtor, that was information that wasn't disclosed as well?
Yeah. So unfortunately, the only evidence that can be brought in to be able to display to the board is evidence that you've already filed in advance. And so
Okay.
that's sort of, so that there's no surprises for anyone. So I'm gonna ask, can we take this down from the screen? Or,
Yeah, go ahead and take the screen off.
Yeah.
I'll just speak to it off numbers. Here, I can do that.
I wasn't even looking at the screen, I was looking at you, so that's why I wasn't even paying attention to what was up.
Yeah, the claim and the statement are in the evidence,
Yes,
right? Is-
yep.
Is it stated
Some of
clearly in
these
there? that it
images
was
are in
over-
here,
It was over
definitely.
$100,000. I was just trying to put it up so it'd be easier to
Yep.
see. I can go to.
And I
the
never
claim,
knew
but-
Brad Hawker to look so young.
Yeah, but you guys would understand that the value of real estate has gone up 8.5% is on average for the last 10-plus years. So the numbers are the numbers, but the numbers as calculated will come out to $279,000. I apologize for putting it on
Oh,
the screen.
no, it's fine, that was my fault for not catching it, so.
But as you guys
Yep.
are looking at our request for this evaluation, you would have to have somebody give you that number. But that's the number. You can do the calculations yourself, and the assessor's office could do it as well. We weren't able to get this removed. It's still with us, and so now it's $279,000. Next year it'll be $300,000. It's very unfair that the assessor's office didn't say, hey, who can I call to talk about this to get an idea that what you're telling us is accurate. But it's disclosed in the offering of the multi-list or whatever it is.
Yep.
So that's our first statement is we're way overvalued on that. My second comment will be, and I won't put this up, but I will go through it because they have kind of, so if you took that 8.5%, if you took 279,000, that would get us to 1.974 rather than the 2.254. So that's the math, and you can go through it and take a look at it. The second thing, my comment is we put the closest comparable. So, this is general knowledge. I mean, the respondent talks about general practices and differences of opinion and all that kind of stuff. So I hope I'm not getting into trouble on this. But I did have some discussions with why our values are this high, okay? I didn't know that I needed an affidavit, and I don't think we do based on, this is a presentation of what our information is. I did talk to Mary Ann a couple of years ago and said, why are values, real estate values so high in this area? And she said, they're way overvalued. That was her comments. You don't have to take this as evidence. I had to prepare for this, so I have to get my evidence from, or my viewpoints from somewhere. And she said, Dan, your property really would be more comparable to Miscue Place. So the one that I've, Miscue Close, properties in that area. She said, there's a transition zone, and you hopped over a street to the other area, but she said, you'd really be better to look at properties that are down there. So when I put the one up in value, or on the valuation, that's the closest property, it's 1.99 on multi-list right now. It hasn't sold. It's been on the market for 190 days was what it was saying. And this is actually a larger house than us. My understanding was that most of these homes were built by the same builder, but when we get into the respondent, they kind of dismiss this property and say, oh, it's not comparable. But yet the realtor in town says, yeah, it actually is. It is comparable. It's more comparable to going this direction on the street than it is to go the other direction. And you can drive down the street and you can see that it looks like our house was built and then they just kept building down the street. So when I look at the valuation of the property that was shown here, the city has it valued at $1.7 million. Okay. Ours is 2.54 or 2.25, whatever the number is, 2.254, okay? This house is 4-bedroom, 4-bath. Ours is 2 bedrooms above grade, and then we've got 2 bedrooms in the basement. This house has 2,565 square feet according to Multilist. And so if you did the valuation on square footage, this would be valued at $668 a square foot. My other comment is, even if you took the proposed sales value, which, you know, and this does date back into 2024. I know that, you know, there was some mention of that because of how long it's been on the market. Even if you took that they could sell it for exactly what they're asking for, and that's not going to happen because of how long it's been on the market, you know, that would still put our value, or the square foot value at $779. That would put our appraised value based on square footage at 1.7, and we're asking for a movement to 1.915, I think is the number. So, you know, it's pretty compelling to look at, number one, the fact that we've been carrying these contents with us, and they continue to accumulate. But the other thing is my discussions with the realtor where the closest comparisons are that way, not that way. This house is a few houses down the block, and it's very comparable. It's a 2-car garage. Square footage is larger. So if you took from their valuation, we'd be valued at 1.5 based on square footage. If you took it based on the proposed sales price, square footage adjusted, we'd be at 1.7. So we think we're way overvalued based on kind of the current items. My other comment on the you know, on the respondent part is everywhere that they don't want to utilize a lower cost house, they just say, well, it's a different quality of construction. Well, this house and our house, quality of construction, I think is identical. I think they were built by the same builders, and it's very dismissive. So with that, let me make sure I've kind of said everything I want to. So with that, our requested valuation would be 1.915. And I think if I had more information, we would probably be requesting a lower value based on this closest comparative. And if I needed to bring in documents from the realtor saying, your best comparison in this whole area would be the house that's closest to you, I would have brought that in, but I don't have that. So all you can do is you could look at the pictures of the one I showed and this one, and I understand it hasn't sold, but it is an appropriate one to look at the tax valuation. It's valued at 1.7. It's $500,000 below where we're at, and it's a few houses down the block. So with that, that's my evidence.
Thank you. So we're going to move into questions from the respondent. Do you have any questions? Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
No, yes, you're right, you can't hear me. So we're going to take some questions from the respondent.
Sure. So I just had a couple questions. So on pages 22, 23, and 24 of your complaint form, and I don't have page numbers on them, sorry, so I can give a description if that helps. But my question is just to get confirmation from the complainant that the properties that they're listing on there, the $1,999,000 property with the time of sale 191 days on market, that all three of the information that they provided on the sales is all the same property at 215 Miscow Close.
Sorry, I don't have a 21.
Yeah, I don't go past page 19.
I have 25 pages on the complaint form.
Somebody must
On
have.
the complaint form. There was a couple blanks though, so maybe,
It's to page 19 is all I've got.
Yeah, I think we're looking at page 16 perhaps?
so the information that I'm looking at, since we're not going to line up page numbers, it's where it shows the time on realtor.ca, so the closest home for sale.
Yeah,
Yeah.
page 16.
Page 16.
Do you see that?
Yeah, we're on page 16, that's what we've determined it to be. It starts
Okay,
at
so
the very
then-
top of the page, it says home values decrease due. There's some typing.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's, yeah, we're all on the same page, literally.
Okay, so that page and then the following 2 pages, I just wanted the property owner or the complainant to confirm that all 3 of the sales information that they're providing is for number 215 Miss Cow Close.
Page 19 is 117 Dire Gas. Is that, are you asking if that's 115 Dire Gas?
I'm asking, because there's 3 pages that have the same property listing information on it.
I've only got 1 page.
Okay, so the complaint form that we have, if I'm talking about the same one, at the top of the first of the 3 pages, it says home values decrease due is sort of your typing at the top, and then below that it says Canmore Market, it has a couple of graphs, and
Yep.
then a small image with timeonrealtor.ca 191 days. Is that the first page that you're speaking of, Ms. Bannerman?
That is,
And
yeah.
then the subsequent 2 pages?
Yeah, so about the next page, near the bottom of the page, says property summary.
Next page is 117 Dire Gas, and there's nothing else.
Okay, I'm on the right one, yes.
You don't see any information with property summary. Looks like it was a screenshot.
So it's
Timeonrealtor.ca.
page 17, it's this here. So she's talking about, her question is regarding this page, and then the subsequent page here. This is part of the package that you sent us.
Yeah, and so the first and the last, you can clearly see that it's 215 Miss Cow Close. I was just looking for confirmation where it shows property summary the second time, where it says right above 117 Durgis Gate. I'm just looking for confirmation that this property is actually, or that information is actually regarding property at 215 Miss Cow Close.
The tax roll number is just above that. That's what I've got, and the listing is when I filed the complaint is what I was able to get from Realtor.ca. So beyond that, it's either the city's numbers, which is a tax roll valuation, or it's the MLS listing, which I got at this time. And walking by the house last week, it's still for sale. So, did that answer your question? Sorry, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to figure out what you're looking for here. I've only.
Yeah, no, I'm just trying to confirm that the information that is on the second page that I had drawn your attention to, just confirmation that that's actually not the Realtor information for 117 Durgis Gate. It's actually for 215 Miss Cow Close. That's where it shows the 191 days on market.
Oh, okay, so I've got that in the wrong place, I guess.
Yeah, I just wanted to just draw your attention to that and
Okay,
and to the
sorry
board
about
as
that.
well, so that there was no misunderstanding.
Yeah, you're right, that should have been below the property that I referenced, rather
Sure.
than up here. It's kind of in the wrong place.
Sure, okay. And then I just wanted confirmation from you on the first few pages of your submission, the photos that you have of your property. I just wanted confirmation that these are all from the 2012 MLS listing. They're not current photos of your property?
Yeah, that's from the MLS listing at that point in time, from
Okay.
what we had when we were house hunting, so.
Sure.
That would be correct, that was from that point in time. And the listing was the attachment to the contract of everything that was included, all the,
And that's all from 2012, right? 2012?
yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Okay. And so next we have, any questions from my colleagues on the panel?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
I have a question for you. Speaking of this Schedule A, which is page 6, what you have provided to us,
Yes.
what is included, entrance hall, rug, bar stool, bathroom, and so on. And you just said this is from the 2012 listing when you purchased the home.
Yes.
Was there any dollar amount stated? And I've seen the purchase contract, there's no dollar amount stated as well for any furniture included?
No, there was nothing, there was no value stated. My conversations were with Mary Ann, the Realtor, who kind of told me what she thought it was worth, and she told me the beds were from, almost all the furniture was from Stonehouse downtown, and she went through the beds, the electronics, she said the paintings in here, and that was her estimate, not mine.
Only
Yes.
guess.
And it was verbal, right?
Verbally.
Had the cities, or had the town of Canmore said, okay, we'll look at it, I could have had them talk to Mary Ann to get it confirmed, but they were like, no, this is the value we're gonna use on it. And I didn't have that time at that time to file an official complaint, but that was only her number, and I think it's pretty accurate, because I've looked up some of this stuff, but, you know, that was her number.
It's unfortunate that it's not in writing, but
It is not in writing.
thank you.
I just have a question about this table at the top of page 17. So I just want to clarify the numbers that are in this table. So I'm assuming the first one is the roll number of the property?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. And then, do you know what the 12 is in the next column?
I do not know.
Okay.
I can provide some insight to that. That's taken off the town website, and that's the assessment roll.
Okay, and then the next, not the next column, they're all residential land and building. The next one, I don't know what those numbers are.
So can I clarify that table now I'm thinking about it? On the city's tax rolls, you can do a search by different terms.
Okay,
So I searched for Dyer Gas Gate, and then this is kind of the scattering that came up, and this was kind of the tax rolls. And, you know, there's some 1.8, 1.7s in there. And that was, it's not super scientific, but, you know, I don't know what's required for you guys to make a decision. So I thought, well, I'll grab some of those to show that there are some properties that are very distinctly below the value that we're requesting that the council consider.
okay. And so when you were doing your analysis, you just kind of looked at what seemed to be the most similar to your property, is that right?
Well, I mean, realistically, when we first started looking at this a couple of years ago, and I talked to Mary Ann, I said, what would you look? And she said, yours is most similar to the Miscue Close. So and unfortunately, at the time I looked, then that was the closest property, so that's what I looked at. So I didn't know what you guys, I thought if I only go and look at one thing, you guys would say, well,
Why
he's
don't you look
just
at the
trying to
other?
focus in on one thing. So I thought I'd put the spread out here,
Yeah.
but to verify that there's definitely some properties that are below what I'm even asking you guys to value us at.
Yeah.
And there's some that are higher, but you should see some of the homes out there, they're huge. We looked at a few, but when we bought this property, one of the things that was attractive is we thought it was kind of a modest property, not over the top like some of the properties are in the neighborhood. And we looked at some that were, almost double the price. This one we thought was fairly modest. So I didn't want you guys to think I only wanted to find one property to make my
Right.
case. What I wanted to say is, hey, there's a couple of properties here that are actually lower
Yeah.
valued than what we're asking. So that was the goal, now
Right.
that I remember. And I did a search, and I clipped those in. Some of them are higher and some lower, but definitely some lower.
Okay. And so just one other question. So, and I think I missed this, so I apologise. Urin Durgas, why would the properties in Misco be more comparable?
The house design is, I think the house design was built, I don't know if it's built by the same builder, but it looks like it if you walk down the
Right,
street from
okay.
ours and you go the other way.
Yep.
There's a huge monster house right next to us.
Yep.
And some others that are different types of construction, some have yards and that kind of stuff. But if you go down this direction,
Yep.
there's some log, railings and stuff. And she said that's most comparable. You back up to the pathway back there.
Okay.
You're on the same, and so that's my, that was kind of her comments is she thought that those were more comparable. I don't know for sure what the builder was, but I think that area kind of built from our house that direction is my guess. I don't know that for sure.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Any more questions from the board? I'm happy for this new system, but it's annoying. Okay, we're going to take that one off. Okay, so no more questions from the board to the complainant. It is now the respondent's opportunity to present their evidence.
Sure, thank you. So during my presentation today, I'm going to provide support that annual assessments are prepared or required to be prepared on an annual basis. Assessments are required to use the legislative standard of market value as of July 1st, 2024, and that assessments in the town of Canmore are prepared in a fair and equitable manner consistent with provincial legislation and guidelines. So on pages 4 through 7 is information on the subject property. Again, we have an exterior photo as well as aerial maps. The subject is a single-family detached residential property located at 116 Durgas Gate in Canmore. It was built in 2003, and it's situated in a residential detached zone area. The assessment for 2024 is $2,254,000. This assessment reflects the market value of the property as of July 1st, 2024, and the physical condition as of December 31st, 2024. The methodology used is consistent with the valuation of similar residential properties throughout the municipality. So now on to page 8. Assessments in Alberta are governed by the Municipal Government Act and matters relating to assessment and taxation regulations. Alberta legislation prescribes that a property assessment must be prepared based on market value. Market value means the amount that a property might be expected to realize if it is sold on the open market by a willing seller to a willing buyer. The legislation further stipulates that an assessment of property based on market value must be prepared using mass appraisal, must be an estimate of the value of the fee simple estate in the property, and must reflect typical market conditions for properties similar to that property. Mass appraisal is the legislated methodology used for valuing individual properties, and it involves grouping properties with similar characteristics, applying a uniform valuation model based on the verified market data. Property assessments for detached residential properties in the town of Canmore are determined using the market modified cost approach. This approach is a hybrid of both the cost and the sales comparison approaches to value. Under this approach, all improvements are first valued based on the cost approach, and then these values are adjusted to reflect the current market conditions based on sales transactions. This is the most appropriate method of valuation because it mirrors the actions of buyers and sellers in the marketplace and there are sufficient sales to derive reliable market estimates. Valid sales transactions were used in the preparation of the assessment occurring between July 1st, 2021 and June 30th, 2024. These sales were then adjusted for time to reflect the market changes up until July 1st, 2024. So now we're on page 12. And the subject property is a 2,309 square foot, good custom, 2-story and basement home built in 2003 in the Cassell neighborhood. On page 13, we've provided, in order to validate the subject's assessment, we've provided comparable sales of similar good custom 2-story homes with basements. These are located in the same market area and reflect similar construction standards and market conditions as the subject property. We've provided maps on page 13 to illustrate the proximity of the comparables of the sales used. So the differences in the property assessments are directly attributable to the differences in the property characteristics themselves. They're all similar in age and close in living area, with the property at 107 Durgis Gate being the largest. The subject property has a much larger lot area than the comparables provided, which accounts for some of these differences in the assessed value. So on page 14, the complainant has submitted several comparable properties or properties for comparison. However, there are differences in the property characteristics, such as lot size, basement area, and quality of finishes, which makes them not directly comparable to the subject property. In addition, many of these properties did not sell during the time period, July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024. In addition, these are the properties that were listed on with the complainant's complaint form. And I just want to point out that when the assessed values were being brought forward on the complainant's complaint form, that's actually referencing the 2023 assessment roll values. So those assessments are for the 2023 assessment year, not the 2024. The 2024 assessment year values are shown on our table. So when we're preparing assessments, we only look at arm's length validated sales that have been registered through Alberta Land Titles. We do not rely on MLS listings, list prices, or any kind of conditional agreements for the following reasons. They do not represent the final sale price or the actual consideration paid. They're not verified and may include unquantified incentives or chattels, such as what the complainant has mentioned with the furniture being sold or purchased with his property. They also do not meet the reliability standards required for mass appraisal modeling. So just in response to the comments that were made by the complainant regarding the furniture that was purchased with his property, I just want to reiterate that chattels such as these are not included in the property assessment. Only the land and its permanent improvements are considered under Alberta legislation. So we have not heard from the property owner during the inquiry period for the last few years. And we could have explained this to the property owner at that time, that the value is only based on the real property. Further, the purchase price of the subject property was 2012, and this is outside of the time period that we use when we're preparing assessments, being about 13 years old. So that sale is no longer used in the preparation of assessments, even if it had included the chattels at the time and it hadn't been adjusted for that, which we normally would do. It's no longer relevant to the current assessment. And then in closing, the respondent submits that the assessment of 116 Durgis Gate was prepared in accordance with all legislative requirements. It's based on verified market activity. It uses a reliable valuation approach that reflects the typical behavior of buyers and sellers and is equitable when compared to other properties in the municipality. The complainant's comparables, though well-intentioned, do not possess the same physical characteristics or market attributes as the subject property. Once those differences are accounted for, the subject's assessment is justified. The sales comparables of similar properties that were provided by the respondent support the assessed value of the subject property, so we respectfully request that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment at $2,254,000. Thank you.
Thank you. So now is the opportunity for the complainant to ask any questions of the respondent.
Sure. In your comment, although located in the same neighborhood, the property identified is not directly comparable to a 116 Dargas Gate. This is due to differences in property characteristics, period. What specific property characteristics are involved in saying that we're $500,000 more valuable than this house that's across the street and a few houses down?
So which specific property are you referencing?
On page 14, you say that complainant's not directly comparable subject to the subject. This is due to differences in property characteristics. Okay, so you're saying we're $500,000 more valuable than the Miscue Place one that I quoted. What specific characteristics, differences make our property $500,000 more valuable on the tax roll than the one that I stated, that you dismissed as it's got different characteristics? What characteristics are those?
Sure, and the major characteristics that I used in preparing, or that I had mentioned in preparing the statement, the major characteristics can be found on that table up above. So the property at 105 Durgis Gate and the property at 117 Durgis Gate and the property at 215 Miscow Close are all in inferior quality of construction and finishes. There's also differences, obviously, in the lot size, your lot being one of the largest. So when we're comparing the 215 Miscow Close, their lot size is 9,576 square feet versus yours at 13,993 square feet, as well as the size of your property. So if we're comparing to the 215 Miscow Close again, which is the one that you've highlighted, their living area is 2,075 square feet versus your living area, or the living area for your property, at 2,309 square feet. So those are just some of the major differences between the properties. There's more detailed the property detail reports, residential ratepayer summaries can be found further on in my submission as well for those.
Okay, so all the properties in this area back up to walking paths and woods. In fact, I can't even tell where our lot line is, nor can anybody else. Why would it matter to anybody? Is it not mostly the structure and the house and the location that matter here, since it's all walking paths and everything behind? I mean, you can go 20 feet out from my house, somewhere there's a line. Does that really come into play on the house values? I've been told it doesn't really matter in this case because we don't have fences or anything else. Why would that matter to anybody?
So are you referring to the point that we have it backing onto green space?
No, I'm talking about the lot size. You're stating my lot size adds $500,000 value potentially?
Yeah. So if you, regardless of whether you have a fence or not, you still legally own that lot. So that's yours. And when you go to sell it, you can sell it. You can decide if you want to put a fence around your yard, and then you'll have a bigger yard than a lot of the comparables that were provided. So that's why we do include the lot size. It is a significant factor in the valuation of property.
So you're saying the bylaws in that neighborhood allow for people to go put fences up, but there's not a single fence anywhere in the area?
That's something you'd have to check.
Are you certain of that? That I could go put a fence?
That is something that you would have to check with the town planning area to see if it is allowable to put a fence. I've I don't know if there's any restrictions regarding whether a property could have a fence or not. I haven't heard anything saying that there's any restrictions regarding the construction of a fence. Most times, when you own the property, you're allowed to put, except for setbacks that are required by the land use bylaws, property owners are allowed to put whatever structures they want on that.
Okay. And to the council, I would say, if you walk through the neighborhood, you couldn't tell where anybody's lot ended. My next question is on the same page, on page 14. Why is it that you have the square footage for the 215 Miscue at 2,076 and MLS has it listed at 2,565?
So we get our information from the building plans that are provided when the properties are under construction. Oftentimes, realtors will use interior measurements, whereas we use exterior measurements, and that's consistently applied throughout all the properties in town. I can't verify that the MLS information is correct. All I can do is say that our information is correct based on the original building plans.
Well, I would state to you that MLS information has to be correct or they'd be in big trouble. The actual property size, according to MLS, is 2,565 square feet. That's 25% more than ours, and they have a value of 1.7 on the tax rolls. We're 2.25. So that is my first comment on that. Secondly, on the property number 3 on the same page, you have that listed at, I'm trying to read, 2,735 square feet, right? And that is one property, only one property that's sold, correct?
No, there were 2 properties that sold. We have the sale at 215 Miscow Close as well.
On this same table on page 14?
It's the number 8 at the bottom of that chart.
Okay, and the sales price on that was 1.76 for one that's 2,500 square feet according to MLS, not according to your records. And then the one listed on number 3, if you did a square footage adjustment, if you compared square footage, and I know that there's discussion that it's not only square footage, I understand that, then our value would be 1.855 if you did a per square foot. So the only 2 properties that have sold here in this listing are significantly per square footage below where we're at. So I just mentioned that to support. But if you're looking at the line number 8 and saying, okay, that's the comparatives he's given, I would contend to you that the numbers are wrong for the square footage. So if you do a square footage comparison, that house is actually bigger than ours in a square footage.
Yeah, and I'm not sure where you've gotten the information from the real estate board for that square footage, because the square footage on the real estate board states it's 2,071 square feet. So I'm not sure where the information where you're showing a 2,500 square foot size is coming from.
On 215 Minuscule Place,
Yeah,
look at the MLS clipping that was in our data that we presented. It's right on there. It's listed specifically on there.
yeah,
Right
but
beside the
that,
price states the 4-bedroom, and then it states 2,565 square feet.
yeah, so I'm not sure what's been included in that number, but that's not the information that is, it's not the information that's on MLS.
Right, and that's what I'm stating, is the information they provided to you guys is in error here. The
But
actual,
what I'm trying to say is that the MLS information confirms the size that we have on the property.
yeah, okay, well, you guys can make a decision if MLS is correct or the city records are.
Well, so what I think she just said is that when she looks at her MLS database, it actually confirms the number she has on page 14. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, somebody's got an error in number, either
Yeah.
the public listing is totally wrong, which I very much doubt, or the listing that she's got is wrong. What I'm stating is I believe that the public listing would have to be correct and somebody would have the detail. It could be either way, but.
Yeah.
But that's all I'm saying is somebody's got the wrong number.
Yeah.
I think the public MLS is probably correct, but I don't have the measurements on that house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I guess, let me see, I had.
Okay, so do you have any more questions for the respondent, sir?
Yeah, so I do have just one more quick question, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So in your summary, you state, while most comparables fall within the similar assessment range value, 3 of the lower assessments are not comparable in terms of lot size, building area, and quality of construction and finishes. What methodology do you use to determine the quality of construction and finishes? I've kind of looked at the building area and I haven't looked much at lot size, but what do you do to determine that the quality of our house and the construction finishes makes us $500,000 more valuable than 215 Miscue Place, which is half a block from our house?
Okay, so there's several different components that go into classifying a property for the quality of construction and finishes. So some of the things that we would look at are differences in roof lines, so typically a good custom home has been built with more curb appeal. So it's looking at more juts in your roof lines. It's looking at better quality finishes than, just a custom property. You're looking at better quality flooring, better quality doors, better quality cabinetry. A lot of times there's, better electrical features that are in there. So it's the, higher quality fixtures that are in there as well as the plumbing fixtures. So when we're considering that, we're looking at the property when it was originally constructed, and we're setting the quality at that time. If major renos had occurred, to the property, it may warrant, a change in the quality, but very unlikely. Once that property has been set, once it's been constructed, all of the building materials, those don't generally change over time. They just get refreshed with the same, typically, quality of finishing.
And is there room for error in that methodology? I mean, you told me what it looks like, but 13 years we've owned this home. No one's ever been in our house to look at the quality of construction or gauge it or explain how that works. I guess I'm trying to, it looks like a very dismissive statement that like, oh yeah, those are lower quality because they're lower prices. Are you 100% sure? And you didn't give me the methodology for that. Homes were built 20 years ago. You guys know that the quality of one versus another is enough to warrant $500,000 difference.
Sure. So we do get information, and obviously, if a property owner feels that their quality of construction is not correct with the municipality, they can always call us, and we come out and do an interior inspection to verify that they're consistently or correctly classified. A lot of times, too, we get information from MLS, so we have access to interior photos. We also do regular reinspection programs. So every summer we go out and we knock on doors. So if there's any kind of question about whether the property has been correctly classified, those kind of issues get cleaned up. We also have, once the assessment notices get mailed out in February, we have 67 days where property owners can call us and, review the assessment information that we have on their properties. And then obviously there's the complaint process as well, where issues where a property owner doesn't feel that they're correctly classified can raise that with the assessor, and the assessor would go out and verify the information.
Okay, and so just my last question, sorry, but
You're fine.
in kind of dismissing the property that I sent as a lower quality, did you specifically go in and look at internal pictures of that? And look at
Yes, we
internal
have looked.
pictures of us? ours and say one is lower than the other?
Yeah, so what we do as part of our regular sale review, and even with the properties that don't sell, even with listings, we do have access to the MLS information, and that is part of our normal process where we review the interior photos of all of those properties and flag any inconsistencies for follow-up with a physical inspection.
Okay, and so what specifically from the Miscue Place and our property, which I think were built by the same owners, I'm still trying to figure out how you do it. Anyway, I've said enough, that's fine, I'll call it quits, but thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do any of my colleagues have any questions of the respondent? Go ahead, Christoph. Oh, my turn, sorry.
Yes, I have a question on page 13. The comparables, it looks like from this table, only property sold is 107 Durgas Gate. Is that correct?
No, all three of them sold within our valuation period. So there's a column on there, the third from last column, where it has the sale date.
Oh, okay.
And then the one next to it, the second last column, has the sale price adjusted to the market conditions of July 1st, 2024.
And 107 Durgas Gate is the closest to your property as well, just on the other side of the street?
It hasn't sold, it's been on the market for 190 days, it's 1.99, and it hasn't sold.
107 Durgas Gate?
Oh, 107?
It shows sold in 2022 on page 13. So that's the closest to your property?
So, I'm not sure, can I just ask one more question? Is every sales that took place in this area over the last 5 years on your list, or is this still in? Every single property that's sold, is it in these summaries?
Oh, she can't hear me, sorry. Ask the question again.
Is every property that's sold in this general area, I mean, you've got some stuff that's 3 blocks away, is every single property that's sold listed in your response? Or did you leave
Nope.
some out?
Yeah, no, so we only used sales, or we only provided sales that we considered similar to the subject property. Obviously, in terms of location, they're within the same market area. But the same quality of construction and finishes and the same structure type as the subject property.
Okay, so this may not have been the only one that sold, there may have been some other lower price ones that sold. As I recall, there were more down the road from us in this Miscue area, but I don't see any of those listed on here, so.
I have a follow-up question. So on this page 13, it shows 107 Durgas Gate sold in December of 2022, and it shows an assessed value of $2,220,000. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then looking on page 17 of the complainant package, 107 Durgas Gate shows a different assessed value of $2,247,000.
Yeah, and I can just verify, just bear with me a second. I believe that the complainant has included the 2023 assessment information rather than the 2024 assessment information.
Okay.
Yeah, and one more comment on the one that did sell, that's 2,700 square feet, so it's larger.
Sorry, was that a question?
No, so my question is this $2,247,000 is 2023 tax assessed value?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so it's not the 2024.
Do you have any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
I just have a question, and I think maybe I'm missing this. So page 13, we've got 210 Casale there. I can't find that in the evidence package. I mean, we seem to have information relating to every other property that's being referred to, but not that one. Am I missing something, or can you direct me to where that is?
Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
Apologies, yes,
That's
that
okay,
would have
I
been,
was
an-
muted too.
it's okay. I kind of heard it in the background. Yeah, so that would have been an oversight on our part, where it wasn't included in the package. It should have been in there.
Okay. So can we get that added, or just so for the, I mean, it's referred to, it's just we don't have any reference to it. And we're only dealing with 3 pieces of evidence, so it'd be
Yeah.
good if we could have that.
Do you have a copy of that sheet?
I do. I don't know whether I'm allowed to enter it into evidence at this time. Basically, I have included the information from our system onto the spreadsheet, and that's probably, it's up to the board. If you'd like me to provide it, I certainly can.
I guess the alternative is we take it out. I mean, so,
Well, I still think there's sufficient information on the chart that we've provided, even in the absence of the property residential ratepayer report. There's still enough information on the spreadsheet to warrant still being included into evidence.
okay, so would you like to elaborate then on the comment significantly smaller lot area and renovated, and like
Sure.
what
So,
renovated would mean?
yeah, and so where we're looking at on the chart, and like I said, I'm happy to send the sheet in, and I do apologize for not having it included in there. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks here. So when I'm saying that significantly smaller lot area, we're looking at the column lot area. So the property at 210 Casale is 9,462 square feet versus the subject property, which is 13,993 square feet. So that's where that significantly larger square footage is coming from. And then the renovation comment is coming from the difference between the year built and the effective year built. So when we're preparing assessments, if there's been physical changes to the property, such as an addition or a renovation, what we do is we calculate what the improved life of the property and desirability of the property is, so that it's being compared with a newer property rather than being compared as a 2005 year built property. It's being compared as a 2007 year built property because of the various different improvements that were done to the interior of the property.
Okay, and in terms of the quality of the improvements, what do we know about those?
So those, as stated up above, they were all the same quality of construction and finishes as the subject property. They're all 2-story with basement homes. So they're all classified as the good custom quality classification, which is why they were used as for the respondents' comparables.
Okay, thank you. And just one question, just on the inspections
Yep.
that are done. Like, on average, how often would you say that properties in Canmore would be inspected by the assessor? And as a follow-up, is that just just exterior or interior and exterior?
So physical inspections, we do them through the inquiry and complaint process if the property owner has brought anything forward to us. When it comes to our neighborhood re-inspections, that's where we will target one or more neighborhoods and we will walk the street. What we do is we actually review the building plans and make sure that all the property data that we have is correct before we even go out. We also review the MLS information before we go out to see if there's any properties that we have to flag for interior inspections. The majority of time, we're doing exterior inspections unless there's some sort of indication to us from the outside, from the outside, that there may be something that we need to investigate further, or if there's something from MLS or the building plans or permitting process. We're also in town all the time and driving by, and we're able to see, people who have bins out on their driveways, whether they've got a permit or not. So we flag those also for re-inspections. And it really depends on what the questions are that we would have as to whether we need to go and do an interior inspection or an exterior. There are sometimes difficulties doing interior inspections in Canmore because a lot of people aren't home. When we're in town, sometimes we try and go on weekends so we can, have an easier time getting into properties, but it's the nature.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. You had answered my visual inspection question. I was wondering, do you have any record with, and I know that you've not been our assessor forever. We've had several assessors over the last 15 years, but you're dealing with the same files. So my question is that, do you have any record of the contacts that the complainant brought forward regarding the purchase and sale and the chattels that were involved in the purchase and sale? Is there any record of that in your database?
No, there's no record of that in the database.
Is that would there be a record in your database if those calls had come in, or would that be on the town side?
There should be a record. Unfortunately, when Benchmark Assessment took over the contract about 5 years ago, there was very limited information that was actually recorded as to property owner communication in our system. So we've been building that up and making sure that we have the records going forward. But as for past records, we wouldn't have it. Although in the case of this property, as mentioned, we don't include chattels into the valuation of the subject property. So, they aren't included in the valuation. We're just looking at the real estate. And even at that case, I mean, the sale at 2012, is pretty old and not used in the valuation. And even the furniture, is a further 12 years older now too. And even if they were to go to sell, they're not as valuable as they were at the time of purchase.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand our internal processes with regards to how this type of thing works in terms of inquiries, just in general inquiries versus appeal inquiries, which are quite different. My next question is this gentleman's property sold June 5th of 2012. He purchased it June 5th of 2012. So can I assume that his purchase price would have landed on the 2013 assessment, his first assessment, and it would have been pretty much exact to his purchase and sale agreement, or was there another number used?
I'm assuming, I can't speak, directly because of course I wasn't the assessor at the time.
But you
I'm
still have
ass-
copies of the record, though, correct?
Yeah, we have copies of, we can see the past assessments.
I'm guessing since it's the July, it sort of hovers around that July 1st date based on the condition at the end of the year, that, from even my own experience, that would have landed as the most recent PNS agreement, and that would have probably been the record that the assessor of the day would have used to assess the complainant's property. Is that correct?
It likely would have been included in the sales analysis. That being said, with mass appraisal, we don't just look at the one sale. We would be looking at all the sales of similar properties and deriving the assessment. So it wouldn't necessarily be exactly the same as the sale price because of the mass appraisal methodology.
Okay. And then my next question is, what is the process or the procedure when a property is bought and sold with extensive chattels attached to the PNS? How would a homeowner express to the assessor, and I know that we can't backcast, but in terms of looking forward, how would a homeowner be able to inform the assessor of the day that there were excessive chattels included? Like maybe they bought a boat, like that could happen, right? Because you're not looking at the purchase and sale, you're just looking at the new number of the sale. So how would somebody be able to express to the town that perhaps the PNS that's being used to inform their assessment may not be actually an accurate financial definition of their property?
So in a case, especially with furniture, I mean, it isn't that atypical for a property in Canmore to sell with the furniture or visitor accommodation
I would
condos
say, yeah,
often.
for visitor accommodation and tourist
Yeah.
homes, that's probably the standard. You're buying and selling a business.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times the furniture, whether they're in good enough shape to add value or not, sometimes they would be included. So the property owner could definitely let the assessor know, and then we would adjust that sale, not their assessment per se, but we would adjust that
The
sale so that it's,
informs the assessment. Yeah.
that's right, or all the assessments of
Yeah.
similar properties. But a lot of times, because we do review as part of our sales validation process, we review the land titles and we review the transfer documents that are registered with Alberta Land Titles. And a lot of times between that and MLS, which will say furniture included or what the items are that are included in the sale, we can vet that information fairly easily.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to understand how the homeowner makes sure it happens as opposed to assumes that it happens. And that's what,
Yeah.
I guess, around my question. That's all I have right now. Thank you. So we will move on to finding a piece of paper. Sorry, just give me a second. Is it? Nah. No, it's all the other stuff. My kid didn't get a license. Oh, you're a good man. Thank you. So now we are going to move into the complainant's rebuttal evidence, if any, and nothing was filed. But if there are any questions from the respondent, they can ask that.
No questions.
Right, and any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
No questions.
And do you have any more questions over here? Okay, so now we will summarize arguments, starting with the complainant.
This is like a summation, is that what?
Yep, this is
Closing?
it.
Okay,
So you'll be able to provide a summary, and then the respondent will be able to provide a summary, and then you'll be able to have the last word.
okay. So my summary is it's really nice to see that they kind of agree with our first point. I think we're pretty close in agreement on that. Second comment is This is my first time at a hearing. I think it would be good for the board to request that if they're going to put representative properties, why would you not have listed everything that's sold in the last 5 years in an area? When we talk about differences in quality of homes in this area, trust me, they're beautiful homes. There's not crappy homes and badly built homes. They're beautiful. If you get into some other areas, maybe that's the case. But I think it would have been, for me, because I don't have access to that. I have access to tax rolls, a little bit of MLS, and that's it. It would have been very nice to be able to look at every property that's sold. I kind of feel like to win an argument, it might be a little bit of selective on that. Lastly, you know, when you look at the square footage, living square footage of our home, and you do a price per square foot, I've done it on every property that I've looked at, and all the properties would be listed 1.8, 1.7, something like that. So from a square footage, ours is one of the more modest homes. It's got a little bigger lot, but as I say, there's no fences anywhere. These lots, you can't tell where they start. They all back up to a walking paths, and they're beautiful. I don't think the lot size has a lot to do with it. So you guys have been very patient. Thank you very much. And I think I don't have much more to say. You guys kind of know where we stand. I think ours is a very modest ask on the reassessment.
Thank you. And the respondent, argument summation?
Sure. So I just want to reiterate that the property, subject property was assessed in accordance with all the legislative requirements, and it's been based on verified market activity. It does reflect, we believe that it does reflect the typical buyer behavior of buyers and sellers, and it is equitable compared to other properties within the municipality, including other properties within the subject properties neighborhood that are similar to them. We don't feel that the complainant's comparables possess the same physical characteristics or market attributes that as much as the respondent. And we do believe that we, sorry, it's been a long couple of days. I'm losing my voice here a little bit. So anyways, we do feel that the sales comparables of similar properties that were provided by the respondent support the assessed value of the subject property. So we respectfully request that the Assessment Review Board confirm the assessment at $2,254,000. Thank you.
Thank you. And sir, do you have last words you'd like to?
No, thanks. You guys have been, like I say, very patient, and thanks for working
Oh,
through
you're welcome.
lunch, because
That's our job.
yes, that's very nice of you.
Okay, so thank you everyone for your cooperation and for your helpful presentations. At this time, I would like to ask the parties if they feel that they have been heard today and if they feel that they've received a fair hearing, starting with you, sir.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you. And Ms. Bondman?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I will now declare the hearing closed. No further evidence or submissions may be received by the board. I don't have the final piece of paper. Basically, you get an answer in 37 days at max. Oh, here we go. The Municipal Government Act requires a written decision within 30 days and gives the clerk an additional 7 days to issue the decision. We will make every effort to meet or beat those requirements, and the clerk will forward our decision to you at our earliest opportunity. You are in that last hearing of the day, and so I now close the ARB for the day. Thank you. You're
All
welcome.
right, thank you. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. Sorry about that. I don't literally know what I did with it.